What's up, guys? Edrone here. Welcome in, everybody, to Send It Sunday with special guest Bruce Simpson XJET. Real quick, welcome in. We got drone shots. Good to see you, my friend. We got Johnny DRC, No One FPV. We got Free Lojo FPV. What's up? Steve-O 43068. Mr. Crowley and his drone. Welcome in. TJ Giggles and Drones. Good to see you as well, my friend. King Keek, what's up, brother? You got John Coopy as well. Wow. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. One Vision Aerial as well. I saw 107 Drones. We got Borked in the house. And my friend Saggy Balls. What's going on, brother? Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. It's going to be an awesome stream tonight. I'm going to try to do my best to keep up with chat. Without further ado, please welcome in our very special guest of the night, Bruce Simpson, AKA XJET. There he is, my man, Bruce Simpson, XJET. Welcome in, my friend.
Oh, I see you. My appearance fee has come through, so I'm good to go now. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent, excellent, man. So happy to have you on the show. Hope you like the intro I made for you. I love that gap you smashed through the fence as well.
Yeah, grandpa speed. Yeah, it's great.
I loved it, man. So happy to have you on the show. And man, what an iconic legend you are in this hobby, man. So I'm just so fortunate that you come to hang out with us tonight for Send It Sunday, man. Thank you so much.
I'm just an old guy having fun, sharing it around with everybody else.
It is fun, isn't it? It's just so much fun, so addicting. And I heard, and we were talking earlier before the stream. You know, I kind of wanted to hog you all to myself. I had to say, okay, I got to get him on the show. I'm gonna end up stealing him for the whole time. I loved our conversation before the show. It was great. But yeah, you said that you got some flying in yesterday.
Yeah, it was raining and cold, but you know, you can't go too long without flying, especially when you're old, because you forget everything. So we went out, Bill and I and John went out, had a few flights, and yeah, it was a cold, miserable day, but we had a good time.
That's good, man. Well, I'm sorry that the weather's not cooperating, but I'm definitely thankful that you were able to at least get out and get some flights in. Definitely helps with the mental health for sure when it comes to getting out and flying, man. Absolutely.
Yep, sure does. I think that's the big thing. Actually, this whole hobby is really good for mental health. There's been so many people that you can see it's changed their lives. And there's not many hobbies that will do that. I think it's partly down to the community. We've got such a huge community. Everybody's there supporting everybody else. That makes such a difference.
Absolutely. And speaking of community, we got more people come in. We got my man, Maddie's Drone World. What's up, buddy? Good to see you, Maddie. We got No One FPV, Bob Noxious RX. What a wonderful and fantastic community we do have, Bruce. Absolutely. And so thankful for everybody as well. And yeah, if you're lucky enough to actually have locals to fly with, it just makes the hobby that much greater when you get to share it with people that you love, you know?
Yep. We've got a whole airfield to ourselves as well.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I love when you chase the jet up there. I had to get that on there. You were doing good, man. You were right on him.
Yeah, well, we used to have a tower too, but I'm afraid that's gone.
I know. That's such a shame. And you fought so hard to keep that. And not only you, but your whole, the whole community was with you with that. And still, I guess, just wasn't enough to change their mind. That's a shame.
Yeah, you can't win every battle, but the only battle that's truly lost is the one that you never bothered fighting. And the whole community's in that situation now with all the stupid regulation that's going on. If we don't pull together and fight effectively, we risk losing so many of the freedoms that we've enjoyed for decades and unnecessarily losing them, because I think we all know that we're not the danger, the threat that some certain groups allege we are, but nobody's listening.
I know, and it's such a rewarding hobby and has saved so many people, from depression and drug abuse and just I could just go on and on. Some physical as well. I mean, some people that have had some physical problems, they've been able to get an FPV and help them out, a lot. It's just such a rewarding hobby, and I just hate to think about, our government, who's supposed to be, taking care of us, trying to take this away and make it so impossible to go out and have a good time, without having all these, loopholes and all these things that we have to do. It makes it a burden,
Yeah, I think governments of the world look after the people who have the money, basically. That's just the nature of the beast. They probably don't even realize how much they're doing that, but it is all down to money these days. If you don't have the money, you don't have the power and the influence.
Absolutely, Bruce. Well, we would encourage everybody, to send those emails, maybe even multiple emails to your local representatives, so we can try and get something changed with this remote ID and the weight. I mean, that would be amazing if that would actually come to fruition. If we could get the sub 250 lowered.
Yeah, I as I've said in other videos, I fully support it, but I wouldn't be betting money on it happening, raising the weight limit, because
I said lower.
It's being driven by DHS and others. It's not being driven by the FAA. It is the DHS has told the politicians, you must do this or we're all going to die. So the politicians are going, oh, we've got to protect ourselves. We'll do this. And so, yeah, there is no, as I say, at every opportunity, the death toll related to the recreational use of multi-rotor drones remains at zero, as it has done through the entire history of mankind across the entire face of the planet. Recreational multi-rotor drone use is one of the least dangerous occupations or hobby pastimes there is in the world, both for those who undertake it and for innocent third parties.
Absolutely. And, I think another way that we can try and battle for our hobby is to just keep sharing it, right? The more people that get involved, the more likely we are to get, a senator or a congressman, or, I mean, who knows, a president or one of their relatives to get into it. And then maybe that's what it will take for them to be like, wait a minute, now my son Johnny has to do all this stuff in order to go out back and fly his drone. This seems a little bit, overreach here. I mean, I think that's what needs to happen. Like someone that has a realm of power needs to have someone to put it into perspective in their actual daily life, so they can see it for themselves. Like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Why does he have to do all this just to go out back and fly a drone? This just seems ludicrous.
Yeah, that's the thing. We need to have an international FPV day where everybody goes out into the local park and takes spectator goggles with them and just flies through packs with other people wearing the goggles, because I've yet to see anyone that has not been utterly blown away by the experience. You can tell them about it. Yeah. They can watch a video on YouTube, but until they put those goggles on, they just don't know what it's like. And once you do that, you change their perspectives. I've had Karens come up to me and complaining, and I've said, here, put these on. See what I can see. You'll see I can't actually spy on anybody. And halfway through the flight, they're just dribbling at the mouth and they're over the wound. Hey, where can I get one of these? Oh, this is great. So it is a mind-changing experience, and we're not doing enough of that. Every time I go out in public to the park, I take my spectator goggles, and quite often, probably 3 times out of 4, I end up taking someone for a ride, and they first thing they say is, where can I buy one of these? It's that mind-changing. So we need to do that more, and we're not doing it as a community. We tend to be pretty much focused on ourselves and our own community. We need to reach out much further, and that's probably the biggest failure we have, is we're not embracing, encouraging people from outside to come in an effective way.
Absolutely, Bruce. And I've actually had local law enforcement and security roll up, and we've been able to talk to them and say, the first thing they say is, hey man, what are you guys doing here? I see, a group of guys over here. We're all kind of in the same area, and they see all these things in our head, and they see all these remote, aircraft, and they're like, what are you guys doing here? We're like, oh, we're flying FPV, you want to see? And we'll show them. And 9 times out of 10, as soon as we show them what we're doing, they love it. They're like, wow, that's so cool. I had no idea this technology even existed, that you could even do this. And they're like, how do I get in? And that's when it just opens up the door. And most of the time they're just like, have fun, don't care what you're doing here, just be safe, follow whatever rules, don't break anything, kind of thing, other than your own stuff. and just have a good time, you know?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I say to the police is, can you loosen these up? They're too tight. But after that, it usually works out pretty well. And it's interesting because I fly at the local park a reasonable amount of the time. And now just everyone that walks past says, "G'day, Bruce, how's it going?" You know, everyone knows me because I'm the guy that sits there flying drones. No one's afraid. No one's scared. And as I pointed out to a local council, we've had a number of dog attacks in that park. You know, people with dogs the dogs have bitten people and so forth. But no one's ever been remotely injured by a drone. Yet they're quite happy to allow dogs to roam free and things, but they're still concerned about drones. Ooh, these drones are dangerous, but they've never bitten anybody. That's the problem. We tell people things and they just choose to ignore the facts. I mean, Gatwick was a great example of that. We show us the drone, give us the no, we've got no evidence, but there was a drone, you know, and the media runs with it, and we get no say in the way the public perceives us unless we go out there and work with the public directly. And I'd really like to have an international FPV day where we all go out into the parks, as I said, with our drones and with our spectator goggles, and that could sway things quite a bit, especially if it was a everybody all over the world at once thing, because that would then get in the headlines of the papers. You know, the papers couldn't ignore us, the TV stations couldn't ignore us, and most people, unfortunately, get their view of the world through television or through a newspaper or online news. They don't get it through our eyes; they get it through those mainstream media. And to date, the mainstream media has been really, really focused on the negatives associated with their hobby. So we need to change that around, produce some good news stories, because as long as it's a story people want to read, they'll publish it.
Absolutely, Bruce. And you have been such an awesome voice in the community for us. And we definitely need more people like yourself, you know, to get involved. And the fact that FPV really has gotten more into mainstream media, it's just still in the background. It's like we've gotten into mainstream media and we're using it in TV and commercials and movies, but no one sees it because it's all in the background. So we got to bring it to light. Absolutely, man. Couldn't agree more. Oh, I made a special banner here just for you, Bruce. I want to make sure I put that up there for you.
Just in case I forget who I am. I'm getting that old.
Exactly.
I would challenge all other social media influencers who are in the community to speak out, stand up, make a point. You know, just work to educate not only the community but people outside the community. I sometimes think I'm a lone voice shouting in an echo chamber here, but we really need to get more people who have got reach into other sectors of the world to say stuff. You know, we need to get our voice out there.
Absolutely. We have to fight for our hobby, because if we don't, I mean, who will? You know, if the people that love the hobby the most aren't fighting for it, well, no one else is going to, right? So exactly. Absolutely, we got to make a stand. I totally agree with you.
We have to be cohesive and smart in the way we take our stand. To date, our biggest weakness has been the fact that we are just waiting for things to happen. We're not proactive. We don't, and we had this campaign, letter writing campaign, but as I've said before, those tend to be wildly ineffective, and it's looking as if they are going to be ineffective. A lot of people have been getting form replies. They've sent a form, that copy and paste email or letter to their senators, and they're getting a copy and paste reply, which means it's not being read. It's just being, filed. And sure, they'll have a tally of the total number of letters or emails I've got, but we are a very small community. Even if everybody in the hobby wrote to their senators, it wouldn't be 1 million people. And that means it's a very, very, doesn't even appear on their radar. They don't care, because 1 million people, that's nothing. When you get 10 million, 30 million, 100 million, then they start to listen if you do a mail campaign. But if you're doing a mail campaign with just a few thousand people, it actually harms you to a degree, because it shows the politicians just how few people there are that this concerns. So we don't have to worry about them. We only got 300 letters or emails. We don't care. So it can be a double-edged sword, because it's like the online petition. People often say to me on these issues, why don't you start an online petition? And my position is because it would show people how weak we are, how few of us there are. You start an online petition that can be accessed from all around the world, and you get 10,000 signatures. It's nothing. We've got how many? 8 billion people in the world, and only 10,000 of them felt strongly enough about this to actually put their name to a petition. You really have to be smarter than that, because these things sound great on the surface, but ultimately, don't think of it from the point of view of we want change. Think of it from the point of view of I'm a politician. I'm a very busy man. can I even be bothered dealing with such a small percentage of the population with their issues? No, there's much bigger things to consider. So we have to really, really box smart on this. And I've been doing this for, let me see, probably over 60 years. I've been battling bureaucracy, battling politicians, and I've had wins and losses. Yeah, but even a loss gives you information you can use next time to hopefully get a win. And as my batting average is increasing as I get older, because I'm working on the experiences that I've had before. And you don't win every battle, just like with our airfield tower. We lost that one. But I've won a lot. I had to fight for nearly 5 years to get our local council to give us permission to fly drones in the park. But I just kept chugging away, eroding, and eventually reached the point where they had nothing that they could say that they hadn't already said. And the points that I'd raised were valid, and they couldn't basically say they weren't. So they had to yield. But it took a lot of work, an awful lot of work. Shouldn't have taken that long, but it did. But one thing I've learned is you never give up. If you give up, you've lost. But you keep, it's like, the dripping water will wear away a rock over given enough time. So I'm Mr. Drip.
Well, yeah, and then when you actually get a win, I mean, that kind of gives you the fuel to keep going, like when you just get loss after loss after loss, you kind of start to get that mentality of, man, it doesn't matter what I do, like nothing's going to change. I've done everything that I feel like I can do and nothing's changing. But we saw when they originally opened up for comments for the original NPRM, we saw what we can do if we all come together. Well, it wasn't all of us, but most of us, a lot of us can come together and voice our opinion for the comments. It did slow down and change some of the initial rulemaking that was to be with the remote ID, as far as, oh, you have to be hooked to Wi-Fi and all that. So we did make a difference, but it wasn't a huge win, but it was a little bit.
Yeah, people have said we made a difference. But if you look closely at the response to the NPRM, it wasn't the fact that people were saying we don't want networked remote ID that caused them to back down to broadcast. It was the fact that their technology partners said we cannot provide the infrastructure you're going to need to get that level of coverage. So you cannot use networked remote ID until that's done. So what the FAA said is we will not be implementing networked remote ID at this time, because they know they couldn't do it if they wanted to. They are going, as soon as the technology is available, as soon as there's enough coverage, they will introduce it, because that is the plan. And they also said, they're going to have the 5-year period where after 5 years there'd be no more freers issued, and they would age out over time. And then they came back and said, no, we'll let you have more freers. But then they came back and said, we're only going to have 2,500 or 2,000 for the entire country, and we only expect non-AMA CBOs to request 4 new freers a year. I mean, these are ridiculous numbers. It shows you that they didn't listen because they had to. They listened only to the people that were going to provide the technology, and our voice was heard, but nothing really changed as a result of that. Even if we hadn't made those submissions, we would still not have network remote ID because we don't have the technology to deliver it. And the things that really mattered, why should I have to have remote ID if I'm flying on my own property, completely ignored.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it's a shame that there's such a disconnect between, the lawmakers and what they're trying to push and the agendas versus, what's actually happening down here on the ground. The airspace is such a huge place. We could divide it up and share it up so much better than what they're trying to do. They're just trying to take it all. Just take it all. And, whoever's got the highest dollar, whoever puts in the highest bid, you got it, Amazon, Walmart, whatever. And that's not the way it should be. We should be able to have our fair share of the piece of the pie without making it so ridiculous, and expensive and burdensome to where it just pushes people right out of the hobby. Absolutely.
Yeah, that is the problem. That as I said, the government serves the money. And if you look at a good example of this is if we look on the committees that advise the FAA about rulemaking and so forth, on the UAS committees, there's not one hobby representative, not one member of those committees that is solely representing the hobby. We've got Airbus and we've got Boeing and we've got all the UAV companies, and they're all there. They've all got a chair. They've all got a seat to advise. But where is the hobby representative? The AMA isn't there. Even Brendan Schulman from DJI, he is not there. All we've got is Vic Moss and Kenji, and they say they're representing the hobby, but both of them still have a commercial interest in the UAV industry. So they're not solely representing the hobby. So if it comes down to it, do I make a recommendation that benefits me as a business person in the industry, or do I make a recommendation that benefits the hobby and may disadvantage me as a business person? Now, it's your responsibility, if you've got a company, to do the best for your shareholders. So if you have a company in the industry, you're going to have to vote in favor of the industry's perspective, not the hobby's perspective. So and when you look at it at the moment, over 80% of all the unmanned aerial aviation in America is performed by amateurs, by hobbyists. So why does the 80% get zero representation and the 20% gets 100% representation? It's not a democratic principle to do that. And it shows just the distorting effect that money has on this whole thing.
Yeah, it's a shame. And Bruce, I mean, you have been such an advocate for our hobby, and you've been right on the front lines, fighting for our hobby. And how, I have to ask you, and I'm so curious, how did all this come to be about for you? Like, how did all this start for you with FPV? How did you get started with it?
Back in 2002, I built my low-cost cruise missile in my garage, which got me in a lot of trouble, which was basically warning of what's happening in places like Ukraine now. It's so easy to build things that could have an offensive potential. And I thought I would raise that at the time, because you could do it way back in 2002. You could buy the stuff off eBay, you could just build stuff in your garage and make what effectively becomes, well, they call it a kamikaze drone, but in fact, it's like a low-cost cruise missile. And I knew that you could build these for $5,000 US, and by sheer volume of numbers, you could overwhelm an enemy because it's costing them $1 million to shoot everyone down. You'd bankrupt them, and that's the way it would work. So I raised that specter, and at the time, the US government didn't want to acknowledge that. So I got severely punished for being so bold as to say, hey, this is a risk. They know it's not a risk. It's not a risk. That was the official line. But the unofficial line, I got a lot of emails from people in the service who said, we're aware of this risk. We're trying to alert our superiors to this risk, but nobody's listening. And now I find it ironic that 20 years later, they're telling us, oh, this is a risk. It must be stopped. Well, I'm sorry. It's been 20 years. Nobody has done that outside the theater of war. So I'm happy to admit I was wrong. Not wrong that you couldn't do it, but I was wrong to think that people would do it. Because if you're a bad actor, there are a lot easier ways to inflict terror. I mean, lives are cheap, and we look at pressure cookers have been weaponized at the Boston Marathon. People died as a result of that. We don't see the government saying, well, we must restrict pressure cookers. We must put remote ID on pressure cookers. We must, do whatever. No, yet they are a proven threat. They have taken lives. Bad actors have used them. Yet our little drones, oh, no, they're far too dangerous. You've got to register. You've got to sit an exam. You've got to have remote ID. All these things for a recreational device that has never claimed a single human life as a result of their recreational use. So, yeah, that got me really annoyed. When I saw what was happening, I thought, someone's got to stand up to this. It is just outright over-regulation. And it's not what I wanted to see for the hobby. The hobby has given me an immense amount of joy over my lifetime. And I've seen so many other people that have also got so much joy out of this hobby. And what the current problem is that the industry doesn't realize that it's the hobby that creates the flow of fresh talent for aviation, aerospace, engineering, all these industries. People get interested in models, they build model aircraft, and that becomes a passion, and then they decide to turn it into a career. Now, if we take that away, people won't find model aircraft and model aviation. They'll probably become lawyers and accountants, and we don't need any more of them.
And it's such a rewarding hobby, especially for our youth. You can have our youth learning these, really utilizing these amazing talents and learning these skills that can help push them further into their careers. Why would the government want to take away from that? Why would they want to downplay our youth and take away possible, skill building sets that they could use to put to good work to get, great jobs out here, great careers, be able to have some brilliant minds get involved and just keep innovating? It's almost like they're trying to slow down innovation. It's like, no, you can't slow it down. The ball is already rolling. You can't just say, no, we got to stop innovating because it's going too fast. No, you need to keep up. You need to get your rules in line with innovation. That's the thing. You're way behind the mark. You're way behind the mark with where the innovation is. The rules do not make sense for where the technology is now currently. It's too far behind. They just need to be brought up to speed.
Yeah, and the hypocrisy of like the FAA and all the regulators, the hypocrisy we embrace STEM. We're going to have all these STEM programs because we want the youth to. But then they put age restrictions on, like in the UK, you've got to be a certain age before you can legally own a model over 250 grams. And in the USA,
that's not right.
There's similar restrictions. If you've got a kid, say an 8-year-old kid, saves his pocket money, buys a model airplane, he can't fly that without remote ID in the local park because regulations and standard remote ID, which is a requirement for ready to fly stuff, that places him at risk because someone with a phone can find out where he's standing. And, kids are enough peril these days, given our society. Why are we doing that? We're saying we want young people to embrace this technology. On the other hand, they're saying, no, we don't, because we're regulating it so they can't. I mean, this is just, it's so much duplicity, and I can't stand that. Hypocrisy is one thing.
It's such like a double standard, right? Here we are as a country saying, oh no, we want to ban, DJI from our list of approved, vendors because they're spying on us. But yet these same people want us to attach broadcast modules to our drones to spy on us.
Yeah.
So it makes absolutely no sense. Oh, well, you can't spy on our people, but we sure can, but you can't. And we can spy on your people, but you're not going to spy on our people. And here's the thing. If every politician had a drone in their pocket instead of a phone, I think the results will be a lot different, because you don't see them banning iPhones because iPhone has been collecting their data and spying on them for years. No, they just put them in their pocket and they just live their lives and everything is hunky gravy. Well, if they had a drone in their pocket, I think it'd be a lot different, don't you?
I do. I agree. And if you look at the what the NSA has been doing and so forth with all the revelations from whistleblowers, I mean, it's obvious that it's a whole lot of hypocrisy. But if I was DJI, I would pre-install TikTok on my drones just to piss the government off.
That's a great idea. Look at my new TikTok drone. That's great. Oh man, welcome in, Geeks Vaughn. I saw you as well, stirring up the pot. And Michael's Drones and RCs, welcome in as well. And my buddy Lambo. Good to see you guys. Trying my best to keep up with chat tonight, so I appreciate all. Double A, good to see you as well, brother. Double A is an awesome supporter in the community. Really appreciate you. And my buddy Windchill, me and Windchill actually flew earlier today, man. I had a great time. He actually, I just went out, was going to fly a couple packs, and he's like, man, I got a couple extra batteries. You want to fly some more? I'm like, yeah, let's fly more. I mean, you're going to provide the batteries. I'll fly more. Good stuff. Hey, what's up, Sepher? Good to see you, brother. And Marcel as well. Good to see you, man. Absolutely. So let's talk about what is your main setup for your FPV, Bruce? What do you like to fly the most when you go out and fly FPV at your airfield? What's your favorite drone or your favorite build that you like to fly?
Well, it depends what I'm doing. I mean, if I'm just filming, then filming chase shots like that jet that you saw at the montage you created before, that's my GEP RC Mark V with DJI digital FPV. For other stuff, more cinematic, I've got the GEP RC Cinelog 35.
Okay.
HD, whatever. Yeah, that's really good. The GEP RC makes some really good stuff, and I've sent them to me for review, and I fly them. But I've got scratch bolts as well. I've got a skinny B frame with crossfire in it, and it's analog. I still love analog. I mean, it's interesting because I have all the digital systems. I have analog, and I find myself using them all because they've all got something unique to offer. There's no best. I'm going to do a comparison video where I just say, this is my opinion. It's not necessarily fact. It's not necessarily, something you should do, but this is why I use what I do when I do, because there are so many small nuances to one system working better in one context than another. And, but ultimately I probably still fly half of my time analog, even though I've got all those digital systems. It's just a different experience. It was my first introduction to FPV, of course. And when I'm flying in areas where I want to be absolutely sure that nothing unexpected is going to happen, analog's got a much more graceful decay. I can get away with more. When I chase the dirt bikes, often I fly below ground level because the dirt bike track's quite a bit lower than the airfield, so I disappear below the horizon. And I know exactly how analog is going to respond in terms of loss of signal, and I can figure, okay, I can carry on for another 50 meters as I am, even if I can't see anything because I know the track, and then I'll pop up you can't do that with digital to the same extent, because digital doesn't always come back as quickly, as instantly as analog, for example. So if the digital's having a bad day, it might take an extra half a second to give me a picture again once I pop up, in which case it may be too late. So I use analog when I'm pushing the boundaries. Now, if I want great scenic splendor, I'll use digital, and if I want low latency, then the HD0 is a good option, but I still have trouble dealing with HD0's breakup. It's quite shocking. It scares me.
It can be distracting for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I should actually talk to HD0, because there are ways they could make that a bit better, I believe. And I guess the thing I like about analog too is that I go out and I fly analog goggles on DVR recording and an HD camera on the drone or on the model, and so I get the in-flight experience, which is all visceral and snowy and distorted and wonderful. And then I go home and watch it in HD, and it's like having another flight, because it's a totally different perspective. You see things you didn't see before. Whereas if I fly digital, then what I see in the goggles is pretty much what my HD camera is recording. So there's no real, I don't even review the 4K footage, because it's just the same. I'm not excited to get home and have a look as I am with analog. So yeah, it's kind of strange. And also analog, I can throw a little $25 all-in-one in the lightest little model. And one of my favorite planes is I've got the little drifter, which is like an ultralight model. And I put the camera in the cockpit. So you've got all the dials and the windscreen and things. And I often take people for a ride on that, because it's just like you're flying in a full-size aircraft from the goggle view, because you can see parts of the airplane, and I'll fly it over an airfield. It looks quite cool, even though it's only analog.
Well, there's something that's so nostalgic about analog as well, right? Like when I see like some good, analog footage, I get like anybody that's been in the hobby for any length of time, you just get that nostalgia feeling of, oh man, that's a good old analog right there, like that got us through so many years. Like that was all you had to choose from in the beginning, you didn't have all these options that you have now. And I love the nostalgia of analog, and it just works. It's cheap. And, it's still being created, still being produced. So absolutely. And man, you have such a good point when it comes to the reward of having that, separate HD camera. And then you get home and you review the footage and you're like, oh my gosh, wow, that scene turned out way cooler than I thought it would, from watching it through the analog. And I mainly fly HD0 now, just because for me, the transition from analog to HD0 felt way more natural than say going from analog to DJI or anything like that. Now I've flown all the systems so far, so I have a little bit of a taste of everything, and having that image quality is important, very important for some. Some people would rather just have the image quality, period. Other people want to have that consistent feel when they're flying. And then other people just, like you said, you like the analog because it's very predictable. You know exactly what it's going to do, when it's going to do it. You have all these little kind of like pre-warnings and signal, signal degradation that you're just used to. So absolutely. I mean, I feel like they're all great tools that we could use in our toolbox,
Yeah, a lot of people talk about latency, because latency isn't an issue for me, because I measure my reflexes with a calendar. But it is lower latency on analog and HD0, because one thing that still scares me is when in digital it stops updating. That's even more scary than just going to snow, because when it goes to snow, it's going to come back. But if it stops updating, you're thinking, how long before I get to see where I am again? And it's just a different degradation. It just affects your confidence when you're flying sometimes.
Absolutely. I can definitely agree with that as well. The stuttering and then the lagging, it messes with people differently. And that's why I love that there's so many options, because, some people would prefer to fly through that and have, that consistent image quality, right? And then others would just prefer to have the actual picture itself degrade, but have the feeling on the controls just stay the same the whole time, and I love that we have all these different options, whereas, before it was analog or bust. I mean, you either had analog or you weren't flying FPV, right?
That's right. My first analog flights were with a screen, probably about 2004, 2005. I was developing some UAV technology, and we were regularly flying BVLOS using, at the time, which was basically like converted CCTV cameras, 420 lines, black and white. and we're flying ranges of 2 or 3 miles, and it was quite challenging back then. But then it got a whole lot simpler with goggles and so forth.
Wow. Just amazing, like, someone of your stature, and then you've just seen so much over the years and where you started. It just must be such a rewarding experience to see where the technology has come now from where it, pretty much started,
Yeah, the hobby has changed dramatically, because it used to be all you had to know how to do was cut a strip of balsa and glue it to another strip of balsa and then peel the cement off your fingers. Now, of course, you've got to be familiar with computers and electronics and soldering and all that sort of stuff. That the hobby that I grew up with is nothing like the hobby of today.
Absolutely. Hey, what's up, Robert? Good to see you. And my man Vitrafly, good to see you as well. And then my lovely fiance had come in earlier. I'm sorry I missed you, sweetheart. Rebecca, good to see you as well. And Andy Taylor, good to see you. And guys, we're going to have open Q&A towards the end of the stream, so make sure you hang in there for that. And all this talk about FPV, man, I'm kind of feeling like I want to do a giveaway. I'm starting to feel like I want to give back. What do you say? All right. We're gonna go ahead and switch gears and do a giveaway. We're gonna do 2 separate giveaways on the stream tonight. The first giveaway we're gonna do is for my U.S. viewers. Okay, so for this particular giveaway, if you would like a chance to win, you must be in the U.S. And then we're gonna do an international towards the later half of the stream. Okay, and XJET has no idea what I'm giving away, but I was thinking maybe we could give away one of his quads that he's got that he doesn't like. No, I'm just kidding. What we're going to be giving away tonight to one lucky winner in the U.S. You guys are really going to like this. So check this out, guys. This is a 3-inch aluminum frame, and this thing is an absolute tank. If you break this, you send me a picture. If you break this from flying, you send me a picture, and I'll give you a $25 bonus if you break this thing, but from flying it. It was custom built by a good buddy of mine, Chris Riley. He built this, and I do not have the time, or I don't have the parts to build this, and I'd rather give it to somebody who can put it to use right now. So you're going to be winning this 3-inch aluminum frame here, as well as I'm going to do a prop giveaway here. That's not the right picture. I don't know where the picture went, where I had all the props in here. Anyway, you're going to get a prop giveaway where I'm going to give away 4 sets of 5-inch props. We got a nice little combination of some Ethics, some candy cane props. We got some RDQ gem fans, and as well as some 3-inch props for your new 3-inch build that you would obviously be wanting to build if you win this. So we're going to sum it up. You're going to get the frame and the prop giveaway here. We're going to get like 4 sets of 5-inch and 2 sets of 3-inch props. What do you say? Does that sound like a cool giveaway to you guys? Well, if it does, and you're in the U.S., you're going to have to do something here, and you already know what that means. We're going to go ahead and pull it up here so you guys know exactly what you need to do. And what you need to do is you need to type down in the live chat hashtag XJET rules. Absolutely. Now, hey, Bruce, have you ever thought about like joining like the FPV Freedom Coalition?
Well, I participate in a lot of their stuff. I go on the community, the town hall thing that they have. There's probably no real value because I'm outside of the USA in terms of being part of that. But I try to, provide as much support and whatever as I can, and when necessary, I refer people to them. But I mean, that's another thing. I mean, the FPV Freedom Coalition is doing wonderful stuff. They're really an essential part of the community. But where's the support from the community? A few hundred members or something. I don't know how many they got, but it wouldn't be many. Compare them to the AMA. All those great old people sitting around on a Sunday talking about how they used to fly model aircraft. The AMA has that massive numbers, which means that in reality, the only organization that the FAA cares about is the AMA because of the numbers. That's why they've said other CBOs will get 4 new freers a year if you're lucky, So we're not getting behind the organizations that we need to represent us properly.
Absolutely. I feel like, what is it going to take, you think, to get people to kind of wake up and just be like, hey, I want to make a difference here. Like, I want to help out my local, FPV, Freedom Coalition. I want to be able to help out. I mean, what do you think it's going to take? Like, I like your idea of where if we could get all of the the major influencers in our hobby to just kind of rally together and do like, like you said, like a national flight day where everybody just gets together and goes to wherever they normally go to fly. That's, obviously legal and safe. And they go and they just bring as many people as they can and just share the hobby and just go out and have a good time. And it would be such a movement because it would be so many people all over the globe that someone would have to be like, man, what's going on here? Like, I turn around and I got all these people out here flying,
Yeah, the thing that worries me is that it's a death by 1,000 cuts. And what's happening is that the community, the hobby is getting smaller. I mean, I get so many emails every week from people saying, I'm hanging up my models. It's too hard. It's going to cost me too much to comply. There's no fun in it anymore because of all the rules and regulations. And I don't want my kids to be potentially exposed to fines and things if they make a mistake. And so what I feel will happen is by the time the people that are left realize what they've lost, there won't be enough of us to do anything. We've got to act before our numbers dwindle away to below that threshold where we simply will not matter no matter what we do. So we have to act reasonably soon, because also the other problem is once you lose a freedom, it's much harder to get it back than it is to protect yourself from losing it in the first place. And we're reaching some important watersheds, and it's only 3 months until remote ID becomes a thing for everybody, and for no real reason. They haven't shown us the justification. They haven't said, here's the business case for remote ID. If we don't have remote ID, this is what could happen. They've just said you have to have remote ID. That's it. There's no explanation of why, whatever. It's just that's what you have to have. And to me, if you are going to take away someone's freedoms, you have to have good, just cause to do so. And they haven't demonstrated the just cause.
Absolutely. I really hope that something can be done as far as the ceiling, where we were talking about a low altitude ceiling, where we could be able to fly without remote ID in lower altitudes, without having to mess with it. I think that would be a pretty good compromise, for FPV, because a lot of us don't even really want to fly that high with FPV. We're mostly low to the ground and lower to the subjects that we're filming. Sometimes we'll go up if it's a building dive or something like that. But I mean, for the most part, we're relatively low in the altitude. So why not have a low altitude ceiling? Where we can just say, okay, well, if you go above this altitude, then remote ID is required. If you stay under this altitude, then you don't have to worry about it.
Well, here's a better idea. At the moment, they have the Before You Fly app, which shows you areas where you can fly and you can't fly, and you've got to get LANC approval if you're flying controlled airspace. So we have an airspace that's already structured such that in some areas you need more permissions than others. Why don't we just add to that mandatory remote ID zones? So that if you're not flying in a mandatory remote ID zone, you don't need to have remote ID. And if you are flying in a mandatory remote ID zone, you simply provide the serial number of your remote ID transmitter when you make application for permission, and that's logged. And therefore, if someone comes along, they can compare the drone that's up there to what's been logged by the LANC system, saying, okay, he's logged in, he's allowed to fly here, that's fine. That would be the simplest and most reasonable reaction to the need for remote ID, because no one should give a damn if you're flying without remote ID in your own property or way out in miles from anywhere in a grassy field. So why make it a crime to do it if it's not important?
Exactly. And I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, law enforcement right now has way more important things that they need to be dealing with, other than little Jimmy at the park flying his drone. He forgot to put his broadcast module on. There's way more important things going on in our country, and as a matter of fact, in our world, than that. I don't feel like taking the law enforcement and taking away from actual people committing crimes out here, and taking away from helping people who are in true dire need. We should not be putting the burden of slapping so and so with a fine because he forgot to put a broadcast module on his drone, or he forgot his spotter, or what have you. It's just such a it's just such a small, in my mind, security fact. There's no security risk. There's basically nothing that they can say, oh, well, this is the reason why we need to have this, because so and so was hurt or killed or what have you. There was a breach in our national security. Nothing like that's happened. So why the need for it?
Yeah, I would say right from the get-go, we were told that these drones will bring down aircraft. These drones will cause all sorts of things. Now, we've been flying, say, since the DJI Phantom came out, sort of the problem category of drones, camera drones, people who don't have the same background or passion for something. It's a camera. They can move around the sky. They don't care about flying. They don't care about the hobby, the community. They just want a camera they can move around, get really cool shots. Now, I say problem because they're not as well educated as people like ourselves that are in this as a passion, and for the flight and so forth. Now, the problem, we've had those for 10 years now, and where are those incidents where they've brought down aircraft? They just haven't existed. So we've been lied to by regulators saying we've got to regulate you because you'll bring down aircraft. We've been lied to. The only really significant collisions between drones and manned aircraft are the Canadian police. I mean, and if they're going to do it, they're doing it with all the rules and regulations and checks in place.
Oh, your audio went out, Bruce. Check your mic. Oh, hold on. Let me see. For some reason, it went to. It says your mic isn't connected. Stand by, guys. Having a little bit of technical difficulty. It says the mic's not connected. Let me try. There you go. There you go. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll make sure I let you know.
Good, excellent. Yeah, I mean, if the police can't get it right, why should we have to get it right? And we're not the risk. It is actually the people doing it with authority that are risk. So, yeah, the FAA killed the audio. Exactly. I wonder what that little man was doing in here.
you see, you get talking about the government and all kinds of crazy things happen on the stream, right?
But that's the thing. We're not holding these people to account. We should demand that you cannot take our rights without justification. Yeah. For example, even the whole regulatory framework, where is the risk assessment, the risk analysis? Because they say if you want to do a potentially risky operation, you have to do a risk analysis, come up with all the risks you're going to encounter, how are you going to manage those risks, how are you going to minimize the risks. There are some operations we can't do as drone operators without doing that. Yet the regulator is able to dream up all these rules and regulations without having to do it themselves. Again, it's hypocrisy. That's the word of the day. It's the language of politics, and it's the language of bureaucracy. It's hypocrisy. Do as we say, not as we do. And the thing that annoys me most is that the people making these rules, these regulations, they haven't done it. Most of them have never sat behind a set of FPV goggles in their life. They don't know. So they're just working from a position of ignorance. You cannot get good, fair, effective regulation from that position of ignorance. And they won't ever acknowledge that this is part of the problem.
Yeah, and I really do want to see, somebody get affected by this that's in politics. Somebody's got to get affected by this, whether it be, them themselves or, their a family member, who gets affected by all this, overreach and overstepping, that the light bulb just goes off. Like, wait a minute. Like, what? Why is it so difficult for my, my son or whoever to go out here and just fly a drone in the backyard to get some pictures or photos? This is ridiculous. Like, this is just not even manageable. How much stuff that needs to be done before you can even take off. I mean, this is just overstepping.
I think the big change will come. The ultimate end game of all this is that there's so much money being thrown into this because there's a lot of companies like Google and Amazon and others who see a potential to make a lot of money out of UTMs. This unified traffic management systems that are going to have to be in place when we can integrate these VTOL air taxis and all the drone deliveries and all the things that we know are just so far away. But the politicians are told we need to have all these regulations to make sure we can bring in these things, and these new industries, the urban mobility and the drone delivery, it's going to create jobs, prosperity, money. That's the stuff that they're being told by these lobbyists who have got bottomless pockets. And so as a community, as a hobby, we just don't feature on the radar. But we're not countering that. And I don't know what we do to fix that situation, but it is a case of everyone's looking for the money, for the gold. So the ultimate end game is, and what I think is going to happen is, they're going to build these UTMs for network remote ID. So you won't be able to arm your drone until you have got a token from the network that says it's okay to arm, and you won't be able to hack it, because just like remote ID, it should be tamper resistant. So our drones will be tamper resistant. You have to fit a module which links you to the network remote ID, and that module will not allow your drone to fly until you have paid to fly, because it's not going to be free. Someone's going to pay for this infrastructure. It'll be user pay. So you'll have to have credit in your account every time you arm. It's $1, something like that. Only then will people suddenly realize what they've lost, and then it's too late.
Absolutely. And before we get ready to draw a winner, I also wanted to say, if things keep going the way they're going, I think what's going to end up happening is, the only people that are going to be standing left are going to be the ones that were truly passionate about this hobby and care about the hobby enough to stay and stick through all of the headaches and all of the things that are coming our way. And in the end, it's going to be the most passionate FPV pilots that are left after all these rules and regulations. Because like you said, most people that, aren't super passionate about the hobby, that might have just got into it for just, something to do on a Saturday every now and then, they're just going to say the heck with it and walk away. They're just going to be done. So who's going to be left? It's going to be the most passionate people in FPV are going to be left. And at that point, we all need to look at each other and say, well, what are we going to do, guys? Because we're the only ones left, so we need to stand up and do something. We need to fight. We need to fight for this.
Yeah, the problem is that already the hobby was graying out. I mean, look at the AMA. It's mainly over 90s or something. But even most of the fields I see, it's people my age and around my age. The one thing that I've been really impressed with is that the whole multi-rotor proximity freestyle racing has brought a whole surge of new blood into the hobby that wouldn't have come in otherwise. And we run the risk that we're now making it so hard for everybody that the people that are in it will stay in it. But we won't get new young people coming through, partly because in some countries they can't legally fly. And in other countries like Australia, the only place you can legally fly FPV is at an approved flying field, a regulator's approved flying field. You can't fly in the parks legally. You can't do that sort of stuff. They're just marginalizing us on every corner. So we won't get the fresh new blood coming through, because people won't be able to see drones flying at the local park because it's forbidden. And so most people's first introduction to the hobby is they see someone flying a model or a drone somewhere where they are. It's not on YouTube or whatever, because that's not quite the same. You don't get the same sort of impression when you see it on a screen as when you actually see it firsthand. And so if we're not going to have that intimate relationship with the public, we're not going to get people inspired to join us. And
absolutely,
we disappear. We become, a hobby that used to be.
Yep. And that's just it. Like, people have got to fight and stand up, because this is our hobby. This is our hobby. And how many people aren't going to get involved or going to leave the hobby because the government's making it more of a financial burden than it already is right now, right? Like, we already complain about all the stuff we have to pay for, to stay in the hobby. Well, now you're going to have just one more thing to pay for, this broadcast module for this drone and that drone. And like you said, if they start making it so that where you have to pay every time you want to take off and pay for this and pay for that, it's just going to make it just such a burden. Just such a burden to fly. So we have got to do something. We got to stand up and fight. Let's go ahead and draw the winner real quick. Welcome in, Stacy. Good to see you as well. I saw my man Fly Zone Drone. What's up? Sorry guys, I'm trying to keep up with chat, but we got some really good conversation in here, and I am not gonna stop that for 100%. Me and Bruce are gonna go back and forth and share everything that we're so passionate about this hobby. But welcome in, guys. I'm glad to have y'all in here. What's up, Robert? Snap Garrett, good to see you as well. Let's go ahead and draw a winner, man. And if you didn't already enter in, all you got to do is type in, you got to be in the U.S. for this giveaway. Type in hashtag XJET rules. And we're giving away a 3-inch aluminum frame. Definitely not going to be sub 250.
Hey, I'm not sure I like my name being so closely associated with the word rules.
Oh, yeah, right? You see what I did there?
I saw what you did there.
And you're going to win props as well, guys. 4 sets. The winner will win the frame along with 4 sets of 5-inch props, a good variety of gem fans, hurricanes, some candy cane props, and some 3-inch props for your new 3-inch frame. All right, let's go ahead and do a draw. Good luck, everybody. Oops. Hey, 107 Drones. Congratulations, man. You have won the giveaway. Awesome. I know, right? He does have the best sense of humor. Absolutely love it. Yes. All right. Well, hopefully 107 Drones is still in the chat. Congratulations, man. Yay. Congrats me. Absolutely, man. You know what you got to do. Send me an email at emarvel09@gmail.com with your shipping information, and I will get that shipped out to you this week. And please, guys, while you're down there, make sure you check out in the video description, you check out XJET's channel. Even if you know you're subscribed, please just go check out his channel anyway and make sure you're subscribed, because you know how YouTube does. Sometimes they can just unsubscribe you for whatever reason, just because they don't want you to learn about the war against our politicians and bureaucrats to be able to save our hobby, right? So make sure you're subscribed. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad to have you be a part of the show. Definitely check out my channel as well. I appreciate you checking it out and subscribe as well. So thank you so much for all your support tonight, guys. All right. And we are going to do an international giveaway towards the later half of the stream as well. Yeah, you should. Yeah, you should, man. You're going to have a nice build with that. Absolutely. So I almost forgot to ask you, Bruce, when you're flying FPV on the sticks on your controller, are you a pincher, thumber, or hybrid?
More of a dribbler. I'm a shaker, actually, these days. But I do thumb because originally when I started radio control, we only had a button, and you can't pinch a button. So the old single channel days, you push the button once to turn right, twice to turn left. That was it. And 3 times, if you did it 3 times quickly, you could have another servo that operated the throttle on the motor. I started out with my thumb, and I just stuck with my thumbs.
Thumber, that's what's up. Heck yeah, man. I'm a thumber as well. I'm crazy on the sticks with the thumbs.
One thing is that because I sort of spot for people and train people to fly sometimes, sometimes I need to take control of it because I fly mode 1, which is throttle on the right and elevator or pitch on the left. Now that confuses, most people are now mode 2, and I mostly teach mode 2 because that's how most of the radio gear comes. But because I learned on mode 1, that's just the way I fly, muscle memory and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes if someone's flying and I have to take control of a model and they're mode 2, that becomes really difficult because you've got to fight your muscle memory. You think, oh, pull up, and all you're doing is cutting the throttle. What I do in that is I pinch if I'm flying mode 2, because that then is a constant reminder not to use my muscle memory, and I have to think about every control input, and I can fly mode 2. Not very well, but enough to save a plane if I need to.
That's a very good what's the word? That's a very good procedure, or that's a very good thing to do. You said change up your pinch.
It's a life hack. It's a life hack.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. A nice life hack there. So if you ever have to fly someone's model and it's a different mode than what you're used to, well, change up your flying. If you're a pincher, maybe try thumbing it, and if you're a thumber, maybe try pinching it to kind of remind yourself that, hey, this is definitely a different mode. So be mindful of that. I can imagine that must be. I've never actually flown a different mode, so I wouldn't even know where to begin. I would probably feel just like I was starting all over again.
Yeah, it's really, really hard if you don't have some kind of constant cue. Because on the simulator, sometimes I'll plug in a Mode 2 transmitter and practice flying. And it's just so unnatural. You really have to think, and you forget. Once you've learned to fly, you don't think about what you're doing with your thumbs. It's just your mind directly connected to the model, and that stuff in between. It just happens automatically. When you actually have to stop and think, it gives you new respect for people that are just learning to fly.
Absolutely, it does. And muscle memory, to me, is probably one of the most important things that you can build. in your flying. Like way more important than any PID tune or anything with the build itself. Like your muscle memory is pretty much everything. Like without that, like if you change like your rates or if you add expo or take away expo, that muscle memory, you'll feel a change. You will feel a change immediately, and you'll be like, "Whoa, this feels way different." I feel like I'm starting all over again.
Yep. It's and that's what I enjoy too. Is I'd like to mix stuff up, and I have some quads that are set to really low rates and some set to high rates. It just keeps you on your toes, and it makes every flight something interesting.
Well, if you ever get bored, go ahead and just crank your rates up to like 1200 and just roll with it.
Well, I can't really fly high rates much anymore because people say that quad's way out of tune, but it's not, just my thumb's shaking.
Now, do you fly with any expo, Bruce?
Yeah, not much. On my fixed wing, I have very little indeed. On quads, I have just enough to make it so that I can do smooth yaws and things without shaking too much.
Yeah, I've heard of some people who have the little bit of shaky hands, because there's a lot of people that have a little bit of shakes in their hands. A lot of people will add expo towards the inner side of the stick, so where when they have those little bit of shakes, you don't even barely see them because of the expo. And then as they gradually get the stick back out, they'll curve out the expo.
Yeah, it's the best. That's what I found today. When I'm doing my cinematic stuff, I've got a lot of expo on that quad because I need to be able to yaw smoothly. If my thumb's waggling backwards and forwards, I need very little response in a slow yaw.
Absolutely. Hey, what's up, Athix FPV? Good to see you, brother. Thanks for stopping in. And I wanted to ask you too, Bruce. What's your favorite, or what's your go-to transmitter that you use for flying?
I don't know. I've got quite a few. I actually the one I use the most for fixed wing is the original Tyrannus, which I think was number 30 off the production line they sent me to review, with the original firmware. Everything is original on it. The switches are slightly rusty, but it has just worked and worked and worked. And if I'm flying with like a FrSky compatible receiver, that's generally what I use. When it comes to other stuff, I've got a Tango 2, which I use for long range stuff. Because long range is only to the limit of visual line of sight, as we know.
Right.
And I have Radio Masters for most of the other stuff I do. I've got the little, the Zorro's really handy for zipping down the park and having a fly with the ELRS. And I've got the Boxer, which is quite good. It took me a long time to get that set up though, because the sticks with my shakes, they were just the wrong spring tension. I couldn't get the tension quite right. I had to find another set of springs that gave me light enough sticks, because most people like firm sticks. I like my almost without centering, almost completely sort of no spring tension at all, because it means I'm not fighting them. I don't shake so much. And also when you're flying a quad, you're not actually at neutral very often at all anyway. You always got some stick on in some direction. So do you really need to have centering sticks? I know when they started helicopters way back, I was around when they started flying helicopters, and a lot of pilots started without spring centering in the sticks because they also found they didn't have the sticks centered. There was no stabilization. There weren't even effective tail rotor gyros back in those days. So you constantly were moving the sticks. So having a center position just didn't matter.
I've heard of a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but I've heard of some people actually removing the spring for the auto centering on the pitch and roll stick, and that has actually helped them with flying acro. I've always just kept well, for me, I'm mode 2, so I've always kept the right stick with the auto centering. But I can see where if you were to just loosen that spring up altogether and just have it flow just like the your throttle stick.
Yeah, the limiting factor
that
for
may
me
be beneficial for flying acro as well.
Yeah, I generally lighten the springs up until the point where it won't reliably center anymore, because you get them too loose and it won't center properly. So I just back it up so that when I move the stick on better flight, it always comes back to 1500. And if it starts going back to like 1504 or 1503, then I have to tighten it a little bit to make sure, because it's sometimes I use that transmitter on another model and it might need to be centered. And I mean, we're all flying angle mode, aren't we? It's essential to have self-centering sticks in angle mode.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely fly angle mode, but I still do utilize it with like tiny whoops in the house and like the Gep RC Cinelog 25. I'll fly that in angle mode sometimes for getting certain like cinematic shots with it. It seems to be a little bit easier to do in angle mode in tighter places.
I've noticed
I don't know why that is.
quite proficient people actually use angle mode for takeoffs and landings. I don't know why. Surprised me. I was watching videos on YouTube and I think he's a pretty good flyer. And then they switch into angle mode to land. I'm thinking, what? I mean, most of my quads don't have angle mode on them because they're always in air mode. And that's it. In fact, if I accidentally, I've got a couple of quads where it is still enabled. If I take off an angle mode, I have to land because I can't cope. What's going on? It's such a fright that suddenly it's pushing back. It just doesn't feel.
It feels like it's fighting you.
Yeah,
it feels like it's fighting you. Once you get used to flying acro, I actually keep angle mode available on all of my quads, and the reason why is. And actually, I just had a reason. I actually had to use it here last weekend. I actually was able to fly at line of sight in angle mode up a tree and knocked out one of my other drones that got stuck in a tree. And it was way easier to fly in angle mode line of sight up there than in acro. Flying line of sight acro to me is a little tough. I'm still kind of getting used to that. So I do like keeping angle mode on there mostly for if I need to fly the drone line of sight for whatever reason, I lose video and, maybe the drone's somewhere where I can get it, fly it back to myself line of sight. I'll do that in angle mode usually.
Yeah, I guess also it'd be quite a handy rescue mode if you lost video or something, just flick it into angle mode with about half throttle, and it's not going to be tumbling out of the sky. You got more time to find it. But as we were talking about before the stream started, that guy Quad Mover or something flies those really, really super fast quads line of sight, and he does all freestyle, everything you can do line of sight. I just do not know how the guy can do it.
That guy, and also it comes to mind. The RC Addict. He was another channel that he flew a lot of line of sight, and man, I don't know how their brains and their eyes can keep when they're flying it so fast line of sight, how they can keep knowing the orientation of the quad when it's moving that fast. It truly is a gift.
Yeah, I mean, like 3D heli pilots, they've got a much bigger object to see, and it's much easier to tell which way it's pointing. But when you get a quad, they're small and it's got a motor in each corner. It becomes a lot harder to tell which way it's going.
Absolutely. All this talk about quad flying, Bruce, is getting me excited to do our community standout portion of the stream, where me and you will watch some of the entries in my Discord server of some guys doing some ripping and flying. How's that sound?
Yeah, good.
Go check out some flying. Absolutely. And if you guys would like to share, you can check out my Discord server in the description. It's free to join. You don't have to pay anything. It's completely 100% free to join, and you can put your videos in the Send It Sunday /Saturday live stream section, and have your videos featured on a future live stream. All right. I'll go ahead and get that pulled up here. A lot of people talking about that they got in FPV to avoid learning line of sight. Yeah, line of sight. If you're getting bored with FPV, try it. It's a whole different beast. Absolutely. How do you like flying line of sight, Bruce? With your FPV drone?
Yeah, I can do it if I need to. I mean, I've on the rare occasions that I've had any kind of video issues, I'm usually able to rescue it. And I can fortunately say that I've never lost a drone. So many people lose one of their first drones because they line of sight it and it drifts downwind and never comes back. I've never done that.
Oh, yeah, losing a drone is definitely not a good experience. That's for sure. I've lost a plenty, more than I'd care to say, but I'm probably somewhere in the 5 or 6, I think, drones I've lost. Now that's not just FPV drones. That's I've lost like a Hubsan drone, and I had a toy drone one time I flew. I lost it, lost signal, and man, I searched for hours trying to find that thing. just couldn't find it. Yeah. Finally gave up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as I say, everyone I know has lost at least one drone, usually by flying line of sight in a wind, and they lost orientation and just drifted away, usually in angle mode when they were learning, and it just vanished. One guy, he found his 1.5 kilometers away in a grassy field. So he spent a day looking for it, and he actually found it, which was surprising to me. And that's why I don't fly over trees much, because I'm too old to climb trees.
That's amazing. I actually had one that got lost. I had lost video, and by the time that it had come down, it was not where I thought it originally was. And when it actually landed, it landed right at the edge of a field. And I searched. I have it all on my channel too, years back. But we searched, like me and my buddies searched for that drone for hours, man, and could never find it. Well, I think it was 4 or 5 years later, the one of the guys that I had originally talked to that was near the property, he actually called me and said that they had been found like 5 years later. So of course it was all, motors were all rusted and it's been the elements.
I did a video years ago on RC Model Review showing how to use your transmitter's directional antenna to triangulate the position of a drone. So long as the battery was still on it, you could use the RSSI to triangulate the position and walk straight to it. That saved my bacon on probably 10 or 15 occasions when I've been flying in over long grass, and I've fallen out of the sky. You can triangulate the position, walk straight up to it. There it is. You'd never have seen it if you were just looking by eye.
That's a wonderful idea. I think some people are able to do that too with the analog modules. Some of the analog modules, as long as you still had as long as the video transmitter still had power, you could actually have a mode where you could turn it on your receiver for your analog module, and it would actually tell you if you were getting closer to where the signal was just by walking around.
Yeah, if you've got a directional antenna, or if you've got one antenna pointed, like a clover leaf, and you use the null point on the end, you can do that. And as long as you've got an RSSI bar on the goggles OSD.
Absolutely. All right. First, there we go. First community standout is my man Orlock here, doing some freestyle ripping. Oh wow! Check out I don't know if that's a power line or a phone line, but he went right over that. Doing some nice tricks here. Oh, I like that transition. That was pretty cool. What a beautiful day, too. It looks like he's using an ND filter, I think. It's got that cinematic look to it. Really like that.
Yeah, it's kind of flying, I like proximity, flying around stuff, not just flying in an empty field or whatever, but, flying around real objects.
Yeah, he's getting real close up there to the roof. And he's utilizing the area very well, going in the tree gaps and out the tree gaps. Absolutely. I love the juicy flick. That's one of the moves that I want to get more perfected for myself. I need to start incorporating it more in my flying. I love that juicy flick when it's done right. What's your favorite freestyle trick, Bruce, that you like to see the most?
Landing.
All right. Absolutely. Landing is a very important trick.
Yeah. It's not optional either.
Right?
I guess I get a bit, like most people, probably get a bit bored with some of the videos. It's just, trick after trick after trick, and it all blurs into just a whole lot of horizon movement in the end. I like it when people choose really interesting locations and then fly in a way that makes best use of the location rather than just looping it. You're doing power loops on everything that's there and diving every hole. Some people do a really good job of picking out some of the features of the area they're flying in, and the way they fly it showcases it. May not even need a whole lot of skill, but it makes the location really work for them in a video.
Absolutely. Yeah, location is very important. This looks like he's got like an abandoned gas station here that he's been flying as well. And I also wanted to talk to you too because you have flown ELRS and Crossfire, and I have been dying to talk to somebody who has flown both and get your honest opinion on how you liking the ELRS, compared to the Crossfire.
Well, ELRS requires a bit more smarts to set up, of course. It's not as simple as setting up Crossfire. Even the binding processes, with the ELRS, if you want to put a binding phrase in, you've got to have a computer and wire it up. And then I just store the receiver images on my phone so I can basically bind a receiver at the field. And I use each when appropriate. For example, if I'm chasing the dirt bikes at our local motocross track and as I dip below the horizon, I use Crossfire because it's on 900 megahertz and it's got better, it curves over into the null area behind the hill a bit more. Whereas ELRS, you'll get a you even with 1 watt, you'll still get a loss of signal if you drop below the horizon because it's on 2.4 gigahertz. So I use the Crossfire when I want to penetrate, and ELRS most other times, because although people, they say, oh, you can do, 35 kilometers with Crossfire, with ELRS, that's only if you've got an unimpeded line of sight. As soon as you put stuff in the way like trees and hills and buildings, ELRS is not that much better than the old FreeSky type protocols that we ran before, mainly because the frequency is so affected by the environment.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that as well, Bruce. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, I keep hearing a lot of people saying, "Oh man, you got to try ELRS. You got to try ELRS." And I'm at the point now where I am so heavily invested in Crossfire that I really don't have a reason to really switch at this point. I've all my quads are on Crossfire now, even the small ones. And I've got the Tango 2, so it's all built in. I don't have to worry about Lewis scripts and all that mess. It all just works easily. So
yeah, the thing is, one of the benefits of ELRS on 2.4 is much smaller receiver antennas, which is kind of handy on a 5-inch or a 3-inch frame. I mean, it becomes a bit of a nightmare to put Crossfire on smaller frames because you've got that big antenna, which you've got to, somehow mount without it getting tangled in the props and so forth. So I use Crossfire on most of my fixed wings because I can easily mount the antenna vertical on the wing. Because the other thing is antenna orientation. Most people take the easy route and mount the antennas horizontally. And that's fine while you're flying away from yourself or towards yourself. But if you, for example, are out to the side of yourself and the model is side onto you, you've got the null point of your transmitter antenna and the null point of your receiver antenna. Doesn't matter what system you're using, you can easily lose link. You can go fail safe, albeit very briefly. So I always try and encourage people to put the antennas vertically, because then it doesn't matter what the orientation of you or the model is, you're always going to have a really solid signal unless you're flying directly overhead. And even then, you're not going to be so high as to for the signal to be lost. So yeah, and it becomes difficult to mount a Crossfire antenna vertically simply because of its length, whereas ELRS you can do that.
Yeah, and the Immortal T, when you mount it vertically, it especially like for freestyle flying, it just gets so much abuse and it just gets racked, when you hit it over and over again. I think that's why a lot of people mount them horizontally for freestyle flying.
Yeah, and if you're flying nearby, that's fine. You're not going to have to worry about those. But if you want to go long range, I see so many people with 7-inch quads and a horizontally mounted Crossfire antenna, and I think, oh, and also it's often in plane with the arms. So at certain points, like if it's coming back to you, it's the arms are blocking everything. And yeah, it's on Crossfire quite often on my 5-inch quads. I use just the wire dipole, and I just have the wire coming up I have a tube and the wire's vertical at the back, and then the counterpoise, the other piece of wire, it just gets wrapped around a standoff in the frame and taped to that, and that's fine. I never have any RSSI issues with that setup at all.
Nice. Okay.
Remember to run your transmitter antenna vertical as well if you're doing that.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Great information. Appreciate you sharing that as well. Yeah, definitely long range. Definitely you want to mount that antenna vertical if possible. Get the best possible range, and definitely want to put it like up away from the frame if possible, because the closer you have the antenna to the frame, the more carbon's blocking it, and it's obviously going to degrade your signal when you're doing long range stuff. Yeah. I put the channel down in the live chat for my man Orlock. Thank you so much for sharing. Make sure you please check him out, and please don't forget to check the description and check out XJET as well. Even if you're subscribed, go down there and check anyway. You know how YouTube is. A lot of times YouTube will unsubscribe for no good reason whatsoever. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you click that bell icon, because you don't want to miss what Bruce has got coming on his channel. And I would love to actually transition into talking about some of that while we get our next community standout going. Bruce, I'd love to talk to you about what's coming up on your channel. Anything you'd like to share. Because I know you've been a busy man. I know you're definitely not one that just sits by. You are always getting into something and always staying busy.
Well, it's a full-time gig for me, like a lot of people. So I'm always having to do something to get viewers and then make a little bit of money to pay the bills. But that's I'm 70 years old. I'm not looking to get rich And that's working really well, not getting rich. I just need to pay the bills,
Yeah.
which is good. It gives me a lot of freedoms that others don't. I mean, I don't have a family to support and so forth. So, other full-time YouTubers have to get out there and have the sponsor segments and the affiliate links and push and so forth. I'm lucky I have a good support on Patreon. Could always do with more, but it's enough to pay the bills at the moment. And so I don't even have to worry too much about what YouTube thinks of my videos, because the actual money I get from YouTube is a fraction of what I get from Patreon. So if I could, I would demonetize my videos, but I know that if you do that, then YouTube just doesn't push them at all because they can't make
They
money
don't push them. Exactly.
Yeah. And now even worse, they will put their ads on and you don't get a cut because they're monetized.
And then you don't even get a cut.
Yeah.
So they're gonna throw ads on it, whether you want them or not, or whether you're getting paid or not. So you might as well get something for it.
Yeah, so the best strategy is I just have all I have is pre-rolls. Don't have mid-rolls because I hate mid-rolls with a passion. And so it doesn't matter how long my videos are. You just sit through a couple of ads or skip a couple of ads at the beginning, and then the rest of it you're not going to be interrupted. And that's what I think is good. And also because some people have YouTube Premium, I don't have sponsorship segments. A lot of people have like some of the video. I watched a video the other day, and 3/4 of it was a sponsor segment, and the bit was I thought, my goodness. And if you were paying YouTube Premium and not having ads, you still got to sit through the sponsor segment or skip forward or whatever. So yeah, and also because I like to remain totally independent. I don't like people to even mistakenly think that I owe some company something because they've done something for me. So I'm not going to take on sponsorships because it would impinge on my ability to remain completely neutral and independent. And so and we've got winter here at the moment, so there's not a lot of flying videos. I put one out just at the top of the hour, actually. Well, what is it now? An hour and a half ago. That's flying in a winter's day at the airfield in Tokoroa. But we won't get a lot of flying videos because it's winter. So I'm doing a lot of other stuff, like obviously the regulation stuff, following up on that, keeping people informed, because there's not a lot of coverage amongst the influencers. They'll review frames and radios and things, but they don't talk about the really important issues like what's happening if you buy this thing. Can you use it? Because is there a regulation that might get in the way? And also my position on safety is, rather than regulate, I try and provide people with ways that they can fly safely. It's rules are great guidance, but they don't guarantee safety. I mean, for example, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have hit 2 aircraft with their drones. Now, you're sure they're following the rules? They must be. They're the police. But it didn't stop bad things from happening. It's a culture, it's a mindset, and it's using all the available techniques and technologies you've got, which is why I came up with this thing, the ADSB alarm. And I've been working quite busily on that and the documentation and so forth. So what I'm hoping is that everybody will build their own and take it with them. And then we can demonstrate to regulators and the politicians and anyone else that might like to complain about us that we're taking an initiative not mandated by law or regulation, but because we are more worried about safety than the regulators are. We're doing positive, practical things to ensure safety. We're not just making up a whole lot of rules that people will ignore at their leisure. We are doing positive things. We don't need to be regulated because we're taking safety as our own personal responsibility. And makes it harder for them to come out and say, oh, we've got to do this, or we've got to do that, because we're already doing this, so you don't need to lecture us on what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. So positive, pragmatic steps. And over on RC Model Reviews, I haven't put a lot of content out because when I started that channel, it was one of the very few review channels. And I came from a background in technology, so I could explain this transition from the old days of balsa wood and tissue to the modern day where it's flight controllers and electronics everywhere and 2.4 gigs. So that was a very important role that channel played. And people didn't know whether a new product was any good because they didn't have the technical nous to evaluate it. So I did that. But now every man and his dog is reviewing things, and everything that I review is the best thing I've ever seen. Buy it, affiliate link, ching ching. And I don't want to be part of that environment. So I'm going to focus more on that channel, on providing knowledge and education rather than product review. Now I could make a fortune just accepting everything that people wanted to send me and then selling it or whatever, but that's not what I want to do. And I don't think there's much value in reviewing the latest quad from the XYZ company at the moment, because every other person's going to do it. And to be honest, most quads fly pretty much the same these days. It's down to the flight controller software, and everyone's running Betaflight or whatever. So you don't see a lot of difference between one quad and another. It's those small differences. And if someone is able to notice those differences, then they're probably in a position to judge for themselves which will be the best quad for them. And the newbies, they can buy anything and it'll be fine as long as they can make it go. So I want to move away from reviewing on IC Model Reviews and turn it into a hub of knowledge and information. The other problem is, from a purely selfish and commercial perspective, reviews have no life. Once a product's reviewed, 6 months later, it's no longer made. No one's going to go and look at a review of a product you can't buy anymore. So there's no legacy, there's no residuals on those videos. Some of my best performing videos on RC model reviews have been Ohm's law, how antennas work, things that don't change. It's knowledge that is perennial. And I have millions of views on some of those videos, far more than any review I've done, because it's stuff that people constantly need to know about. I've had universities and polytechs come to me and say, can we use your video on Ohm's law in our study material? And I said, yeah, go for it. So that's the stuff I'm going to concentrate perhaps a little more on, explaining stuff. Not necessarily which is the best quad, but what makes a good quad from the perspective of the physics and the electronics and things, and try and give people the information they need to make their own decisions. I shouldn't choose for you which is the best quad, because your needs are different to mine, and what's good for me may not be good for you. It'd be presumptuous of me to say this is the best quad or the best radio, because it might not be the best for other people.
I would love to see a video of you doing like a comparison, like an in-depth comparison between the ELRS and the Crossfire, just something like that, where you're actually focusing on the actual technology itself and how it actually works, versus like, oh, check out this module or this radio or this. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, the technology moves so fast that products just get outdated so quickly. And I think we've kind of seen like that peak of innovation where it's kind of started to slow down now, and we're just not seeing the innovation moving as quickly as it used to, at least on the FPV side of things, because it seems like we've kind of gotten to a place where how much better is it really going to get? I mean, are we going to be flying in 4K next year? I don't think so. I don't see it happening, not in a year.
Yeah, perfection is the enemy of good enough, and that is a problem. People say, "Oh, I have to have this latest, like the O3 air unit, because it's so much better than a DJI air unit or a Cadex Vista." It is better, but is it better enough to warrant the price and the other things that may be involved? And so, yeah, I'm going to do some comparisons. For example, the comparisons of the different FPV systems. I'm going to line up my analog, and because I got them all, I'll line them all up and say, these are why I choose this one in this case and that one in another case. But I'm not going to say this is best.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see that content as well.
I've done how does the DJI system work? How does analog work? How does HD0 work? That explains, hopefully in simple enough terms that people can understand it, the technology behind those systems, not the systems themselves, but how they actually work, which means you're in a better position to judge which one might be better for you.
Yeah, absolutely, because everything has its pros and its cons, and some things are better in one area and then other things are better in another area. So yeah, absolutely. Being able to cover the actual technology and how it works and how it doesn't work and how it breaks down, I think that would be, and the thing about that is you know that the technology itself, the concept itself, is going to be around for years to come, whereas the actual hardware and stuff, that's all going to be changing over time. So yeah.
This video is good. This is another thing I like doing is pursuit videos, follow videos, quads and fixed wings. It's great. That is such a fun thing. Everyone that's ever tried it loves it. And it is, the annoying thing is this looks good. Oh, that was excellent. It always looks closer in the FPV camera than on the HD footage later. I think because
it always does, doesn't it?
Yeah. You think, oh, that was great close up. And then you go look and review the HD footage and you think, oh, it's miles away.
Do you think that's because typically we like to use like that wide field of view for our HD, and it just makes things look farther away?
Yeah, because most HD cameras like GoPros and run cams and things, they've got a really, really wide field of view. Your FPV camera, not nearly so wide, so you do appear to be closer. And fortunately, the video editing software I use has got some really good super scaling and stuff built into it, so I can pull it back in when I need to. And I've been doing that a little bit more recently. So I'm actually doing some videos on how to use my chosen editor, which is DaVinci Resolve, which is free. Some of the techniques I use for my footage, again, the super stable footage and some of the other stuff I do. I want to share that because I'd love to see more and more, really good videos on YouTube. Doesn't matter who it is. I've given away my secrets, but it's worth it to get the content.
Absolutely. I really love that he's putting also his screen, what he's seeing on here with all the stats. That's really cool.
It's interesting though. A lot of people now have to be very cautious about what they put on YouTube.
I know.
And that's again this regulation thing. This going back to that for a moment. The FAA at the moment is looking at BV loss. You know, they're writing the manual on BV loss. What you've got to do to fly BV loss. Now the community that has done the most BV loss is the recreational flyers. We've got people that have been flying 30, 40, 50 miles. You know, the guy in Australia, Wes Vati, he did that big long flight, and they're doing it safely. They're doing it without risk to anybody, but it's all terribly illegal. And so the people in the FAA who have never done this are going to tell us how to do it properly and legally, and ignore the people, actually just prosecute the people who are already doing it. There's been 10 years of BV loss FPV by the community, and I have not heard of one injury, one death, one incidence of property damage. Now, you can't get safer than that, but the FAA and the other regulators are going to tell us how we should be doing it safely, and they're not going to consult us to find out how we're doing it. They're going to find out, they're going to tell us themselves from books they've read and from assumptions they're making, and this is just lunacy.
There's such a disconnect, you know, because between what they know and what they think they know and what's actually going on down here on the ground. You know, it's way different what we're doing. We have way more control FPV than I feel LOS will ever have.
And it's counter to safety. What they're doing is counter to safety, because they're going to be telling people what to do from a position of ignorance, and that can't be safe, you know. But again, we're not represented on any of those committees or whatever's. We don't have any representation because we're not important. We don't have enough money, and that really sucks to me. And they're telling us now that it's okay for a delivery drone that might weigh 30, 40, 50 pounds to fly over our houses, over our heads, over our roads and our cars.
Right.
BV loss, that's safe because these people have filled out some forms and they've paid us some money. But you can't fly your 250 gram, you know, 3-incher over beyond visual line of sight, because, well, that's way dangerous, man. You know, that drone could kill or injure. And this is what I mean. They expect us to believe this, and then they expect us to think that these rules have any credibility and we should follow them blindly because that's what we're told to do.
It's totally a double standard. You got a way heavier payload. You got a way larger aircraft. You've got, you know, it's flying. It's going to be flying higher than we typically do. We already know that. We already know they're going to want to go above 400 feet when it comes to these delivery drones. We already know that. It's going to be less crowded airspace when it comes to recreational drones and commercial drones and stuff like that, doing jobs and stuff like that. They're going to want to be over 400, which I don't know why they can't do it like that. If they want to, you know, do this drone delivery, which I think is going to be a huge failure, by the way, if they even try to do it, it's going to be a huge failure. All it's going to take is one incident where, you know, an endangered bird gets struck, or, you know, it comes down on someone's car or whatever. The first incident that happens, it's going to shut it down. It's going to shut it down, and it's going to be too late. And now the whole community, the whole FPV, the whole drone community, the people that aren't, you know, a part of that, like we are, the outsiders, they're going to see that and they're going to say drones are terrible because look at what they've done. And it's like, no, this is what Amazon and Walmart and our government has done, not the recreational side. Like who is the recreational side, or even, you know, commercial as of now? Who have we killed? Who have we injured? Who have we hurt? Show us the reports, FAA. Show us the reports that were filed. They can't, because they don't exist.
It's only a matter of time, they'll say. And that's absolutely true. If we wait a couple more 100 years, or someone's bound to get hurt. But it's you know, again, they haven't done the risk assessment to quantify that time, to quantify the risk, and they'll never do it because it does not support their narrative that this is dangerous. If they did a risk assessment, it would prove exactly the opposite. And then they would be unable to implement these rules because people would say, well, this does make sense.
Well, remember, they switched gears, right? It all changed from a safety issue to a security issue. That was their back pocket grab right there. Exactly. Oh, well, it's not actually an issue of safety. It's an issue of security.
That's right. But if you look at it, everybody carries a smartphone with a camera. So,
right. But they got the same iPhones.
Yeah. And if you look at my videos, I've got a camera that's got a fantastic zoom on it, and I can see the pilot sitting in an airplane, and he's 1,500 feet in the air, half a mile away, and I can see his face in an airplane, and he doesn't know I'm filming him. But if I was flying alongside with the drone, he'd know. So if you want to do covert surveillance, you don't want a drone. They're noisy, they're conspicuous, they don't have particularly good endurance. You just buy a camera with a long lens. Get a Nikon P1000. It's got like 120 times zoom. You can see, the smallest craters on the moon and freckles on people's faces from 5 miles away. That is what security is about. And you, from a high vantage point, you can see whatever you want without raising any concerns. But again, it's just another straw man that's thrown up, because ultimately we want to clear the space so that these big corporations can make more money. And as politicians, we will get more lobbying money, and we'll be able to tell our constituents that we're creating jobs and improving the economy, and they'll vote for us. That's what it all boils down to.
Absolutely. Make sure you check out my man Simi FPV. He was the one who did the wing chase that we shared on here. I put his link in the live chat here.
Do you watch Shelby Voll's videos? And
absolutely, Shelby Voll is amazing. Yes,
that is the pinnacle of the hobby to me. That's so good. And how dangerous is that? You don't see any people around when they're flying. They choose their time and their location. They're not a danger to anybody. They're not going to be a danger to aviation unless that plane or that helicopter is already crashing. That should be just. I love doing that sort of stuff myself. That's what I call. It combines proximity and chase in one great package. I watch all their videos many times over.
I love watching people chasing at night the LEDs. To me, that is like the most intense when they're chasing those LEDs at night. I can't get enough of that. I could watch it all day long, chasing the LEDs.
That's an interesting thing. I noticed because when quads first came out, like freestyle racing quads, they all had lots of LEDs. I've got an original blackout Mini H that I was sent that started the whole thing off and got me involved in this, and it had LEDs on the circuit board and everything, and it lit up when you powered it up, and it was great. And from then there was every quad frame came with massive, super bright LEDs. You don't see that anymore.
You're right. When I got into the hobby back in 2000, it was between 2015 and 2016. I went with the Wizard X220, which was like, if you were getting an FPV back then, that was the drone that you just got,
I gave that a crap review. It was terrible.
It was crap, and it was from Banggood, and it was Yishin, but it worked, and it got you in the air. But yeah, it had LEDs as well. I remember it had purple LEDs underneath the arms. You're right. It's like we started with LEDs, but then they kind of faded out. But then they came back, and they came back strong.
Yeah, I'm actually going to build a quad with red and blue, really high intensity flashing LEDs, my police quad, and fly that around. I reckon it'd be so cool, to light it up like a police drone.
Well, I got to tell you, Bruce, when you go shop for your LEDs, you got to check out flyhighfpv.com, man. He's got some of the best, brightest LEDs in the business, as well as other cool stuff as well. And he does do international shipping.
Yep. Shipping is a killer now, though, isn't it? Since the big pandemic, shipping is ridiculous. I mean, because I was looking at making a whole batch of these things and shipping them, but it's going to cost me $106 New Zealand minimum to ship this anywhere outside of New Zealand. It's more than it's worth. It's like, what? So that's one of the reasons that I decided I'm not making any money out of this. Anyone can make it. Banggood can make it. Anyone, the more people that make it, the better. And that's people want to build it themselves and save coin. Do that, because it's not about making it into a profitable enterprise. It's about making sure that everyone has got the opportunity to prove they're serious about safety in a practical way.
So basically, this will be like open source?
Yep, totally open source.
Oh wow, that's fantastic, Bruce.
Yeah, everything from the software to the 3D printer files to the case. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. Now, so that's the ADSB receiver that can pick up on other ADSB that's in aircraft.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, you can get like Flight Radar 24 and things on your phone and that, but this is designed. You set a radius and an altitude so that anything that flies into that circle, that radius, will set off the alarm. Because the problem, DJI have got this air sense thing or something on their drones, and it just says warning aircraft. It doesn't tell you how far away it is, whether it's coming or going, whether it's going to be a threat to you, what the altitude is. It just says, so you get so many false alarms, you just ignore it. Oh, it's just another airplane. And the time you might need it, you're going to ignore it. So this thing, you can set it up through your smartphone app to every parameter you want. So you can have it so it alarms only when an aircraft comes within, say, you might say 2 miles at below, say, 1,500 feet, then it'll set the alarm off. And if the aircraft turns and goes away, then the alarm will stop, because if it's going away, it's no longer a threat. Things like that, some smart, intelligent software, so that it doesn't trigger unless something is actually a potential real threat to your flying space.
That would be so much more handy. Yeah, and look, I mean, kudos to DJI for trying to implement, the something that was going to be beneficial for a drone pilot to be more spatially aware of manned aircraft in the area. I think that's a great idea, but you're exactly right. I had the ADS-B on my Mavic Air 2 when I had it, and you're right. I would get the alert. Oh my gosh, I have an aircraft nearby. Okay, and I would just automatically like bring it down. But then I look at my information. I'm like, I have no idea how high it is. It could be like 25,000 feet. Like nowhere near where I am. I might not even have to do anything. But I see that I have something coming in my path. And I'm like, okay, well, I just start bringing it down. But like you said, a lot of people, once they saw that it's not really giving them, enough information to actually use it in a good way, they just ignore it. They're just like, okay, yep, another aircraft, probably 50,000 feet, whatever.
Yeah. In fact, DJI's attitude is, I think that it's more of a suck up than a safety thing, sucking up to regulators rather than being safe, because they have geofencing, or you can't fly near an airfield because, the geofencing will protect you from doing that, because flying near an airfield's illegal. So DJI is going to enforce the rules. But then they let you fly as far as you want. There's no limit on how far you can go. And BVLOS is against the rules. So why are you picking the rules you're going to enforce and the ones you're not? It really annoys me, because I fly at an airfield and I've got the DJI FPV drone. I can't fly it at the airfield. Won't let me. It's geofenced. I'm at an airfield, but I've got legal right to do it because I hold all the necessary certifications and things. And if I want to go through a laborious, long-winded process to unlock the damn thing, which I've tried and failed, it's just, why? I thought I owned the drone. Why is it that I buy it, but you control it? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, the geofencing is extremely frustrating, especially when you are in a fly zone. But yet it's still, it will not let you take off. It doesn't matter if you have permission. You have to go through so many different hoops to get it to go through, if it goes through at all. A lot of times it has glitches. It just doesn't work. So you're just locked out. The geofencing is a huge issue, that's for sure, with the DJI drones.
Yeah, I got sent, but you still see DJI drones flying over stadiums and things. So not only is it an inconvenience, but it really doesn't stop bad actors from doing what they want to do anyway.
It doesn't, because they just hack into them and they just disable all that stuff, and they can just fly them wherever they want, however they want.
And they put remote ID on their sub 250 craft, the minis. That's remote ID. They don't have to. Legally, it's not a requirement, but they've decided they're going to suck up to the FAA and enable remote ID on the minis, which is, if I had a Mini, I wouldn't want remote ID. So why should I have to have it just because the company I bought the drone off has decided that I'm going to have it whether I want it or not? Surely, as I own the drone, it's my choice.
It should be. You own the drone. If you want to take that drone and not follow the regulation with it, well, that should be your right to do so.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you want to do, but to be able to say, oh no, this drone's not going to take off when you're, at this location, no matter what, I feel is a little bit, restrictive.
And how are they going to spy on all the good, sensitive military installations if they can't fly there?
Right. Absolutely.
Remember, they're being banned because they're spying for China, all the DJI drones.
Oh, I know. Well, this is at the latest Rotor Riot meetup here. My good buddy Dead Moo. And honestly, Bruce, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have a different opinion, but I honestly think that we're going to have, after the remote ID is implemented, I think that they're going to be going after these large events when it comes to enforcement, because that's where they're going to do the most damage. That's where they're going to be able to make the biggest impact, is at events, these large gatherings of FPV guys getting together. That's where I feel the enforcement is really gonna start.
And the crazy, stupid thing is that they're not going to have temporary freers. I mean, this should have a temporary freer arrangement around this at these things. But the FAA has said there will be no temporary freers, even though the boss guy said earlier on, don't worry, FPV freestyle community will look after you in respect to remote ID. Well, no, they're not, because if you're having a race, everyone's going to have the burden of remote ID on their racing drones, in a temporary location. And like this, they won't get this listed as a freer, even because they don't use it enough. The whole freer thing is so fraught with peril and disaster. Like, if you're applying to get a freer, you've got to get this environmental report. And if the environmental report doesn't say it's, there's no harm to the environment, you won't get your freer. But you'll still be able to fly there with remote ID, as if putting the remote ID on is suddenly going to completely negate any damage you could do to the environment. How does that work?
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. You have all these racing events that you're going to add all this additional weight to these racing drones who pilots are already shaving every gram they can shave. And you're going to tell them they can't operate this as a FRIA?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
And how high
do you go in a race? Heard.
What's the maximum height in a race?
I know, exactly. I don't even think they come close to 100 feet.
Not even that. Most of it's really close to the ground. It's like, why would you do that?
The highest gate's probably maybe 20 feet high, maybe.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, something's got to change.
So it's not
the
security.
Greed.
It's not safety.
The greed.
It's money.
Yeah, it's the greed. It's like, from the grass tips to space is such a large area, man. It's more than enough that we could share it, properly with everyone. But the greed, man, is what's doing us in.
And the thing that annoys me a lot is that they keep talking about the risk to manned aviation from drones. Have you seen how many mid-air collisions there are every year between manned aircraft? There are a lot, especially at the beginning of the year. There was a cluster of them. A lot of people died when manned aircraft flew into other manned aircraft. Now, it's all about situational awareness. And we're not allowed to fly FPV without a spotter, right? Because we don't have situational awareness with our goggles on. The rule says you must have a visual observer when flying FPV. Yet we are not a threat to manned aviation. So why doesn't someone sitting in the cockpit of a Cessna 172 have to have a spotter in the seat beside them? Because we've proven they've got a much greater risk of hitting another manned aircraft than we do. And also they have much reduced situational awareness. So if you're sitting there flying your drone, you can hear an aircraft coming. And so you've got your sense of hearing, and you've got a complete, with your camera, a massive field of view, and you can pirouette in less than a second to look all around you. You've got the best seat in the house. When you sit in a Cessna 172, you can't see down because there's a floor. You can't see out the front. There's a cowling over the motor. You can't see up. There's a wing. You can't see out the side because there's wings out the side. You have a very narrow view of the world. Yet apparently it's okay for you to fly around that 1-ton piece of metal in an area where there are going to be other manned aircraft with similar visual limitations and an inability to hear another aircraft coming, and you don't need an observer. But if you fly your 250-gram drone down in the park on a day when there's nobody there, and there's not going to be any aircraft under those trees, you've got to have the visual observer. Again, these are rules made by people who've never done this.
It almost seems like that there's more strict rules for drone flying than there is for manned aircraft, which makes absolutely no sense. Manned aircraft is larger. You actually have someone that's in the aircraft, so it's more dangerous for the individual that's in the aircraft versus a pilot who's flying something remotely on the ground. And then you have all these other aircraft as well, like hot air balloons and all these small little private jets and planes that people have been, building and flying. I mean, there's just so much air traffic now. Manned air traffic.
The ultimate example of this ridiculous situation is I can go out in America and I can build an ultralight, and I don't have to use an approved design. It doesn't have to be inspected. I don't have to have a pilot's license. It doesn't have to be registered. It doesn't have to have any kind of electronic conspicuity. Don't even need to have a radio, and I can go and fly it, right? Completely free of regulation. If I build a 250-gram scale radio control model of that same aircraft, a 250-gram model, I have to register. I have to sit a trust exam. I have to put remote ID on it. Well, excuse me, does this make any sense to you?
None whatsoever. Make sure you check out my man, Dead Moo. He was the one that we just watched flying at the Rotor Riot Rampage. Make sure you check him out. Curtis, awesome supporter of the channel. And make sure you go in the video description and make sure you're subscribed to XJET as well. I know you might think that you're subscribed already, but you should just double check, because you know how YouTube is. You know, they unsubscribe people all the time, and you're like, what the heck, man? I know I was subscribed to this person, and now I'm not. So make sure you double check. And if you're here for the first time as well, or if you wouldn't mind double checking your subscription to my channel as well, would greatly appreciate all the support and the love tonight, guys. Really would appreciate it. We got one more community standout, and then I'm going to go ahead and if, as long as Bruce is okay with it, we're going to go ahead and open up for Q&A, guys. So let's go ahead and I'll queue up the last community standout of the evening. Yeah, a lot of great stuff going on in the chat as well. Yeah, really good conversations going on in the chat as well. So make sure you guys are keeping up with that. Yeah. Manned aircraft flying over major metropolitan areas. You know, you got DC. You know, what about that guy that just bailed out of his airplane, just jumped out of it and just let it crash wherever? I mean, yeah, it was in a remote area, but still.
And also, don't forget, you know, where they found a drone in near the White House, and so all model flying was banned in DC basically when they found this drone. Yet a few years earlier, a disgruntled postman flew an autogyro and landed on the White House lawn. An ultralight landed on the White House lawn and went into the White House. They didn't ban all manned aircraft in the DC airspace, but with this little Phantom that were found in the garden, we're going to ban them all. When someone actually flies in, he could have had guns or bombs or anything on that ultralight, much more than you could fit on a drone, and that's okay. No, it's fine. It was a manned aircraft. They have a different set of rules.
And it almost makes you wonder, if a drone pilot did the same thing, right? Let's say he had a pretty heavy drone. Let's say he had a huge, you know, one of those drones that you would use to, let's just say, like irrigate a field or you know, one of those giant fertilizing drones, right? Let's say you got a drone pilot that's flying one of those, and all of a sudden, you know, he has an issue with the drone. He just decides to just, you know, drop the controller and just let it just, you know, go where it goes and crash where it crashes because he ran into an issue or something, or he had an emergency or whatever. I think the FAA would actually put that particular unmanned pilot through more chaos and turmoil than a manned aircraft pilot. What do you think?
Yeah, it's quite possible, because there's just no parity between the two. We'll know that drones have become a thing when the regulations for manned aviation start being changed to accommodate the risk that drones pose. But the fact that we haven't seen a single manned aviation regulation changed, despite all the massive risks that apparently drones represent now, shows that then they realize the manned aviation community wouldn't buy it. For example, all manned aircraft should have ADS-B on them, whether they're flying in Class G airspace or controlled airspace. If they all had ADS-B, not only would that make it possible for us to make sure we never came into conflict with manned aircraft, but also make sure that manned aircraft wouldn't come into conflict with manned aircraft. It would save lives every year, but they're not prepared to say, well, you've spent $30,000 on a old second-hand airplane, or you've spent $10,000 building an ultralight, you need to fit ADS-B to be safe. No. They'll tell us people flying drones have to fit remote ID at our own cost, even though it's not a requirement for manned aircraft to have ADS-B. I mean, again, it's all about the money.
Yeah, and then like exactly with the gliders as well. I mean, there's more and more people that are getting into doing the gliding, and I feel like they have way less control than an actual unmanned aircraft when it comes to
fatalities.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's something's got to change, because the risk assessment for drones is just way off. Yeah. It's flying way off. The regulation is way too much for the actual risk that the unmanned aircraft is actually imposing on us.
Everyone loves flying over water, right? It's so good.
Oh yeah. I love how cinematic this is. He's kind of keeping it more cinematic, doing the nice
flying
long
over battleships. That's even better.
I love it. It almost looks like a video game, right?
Yeah.
This is my buddy Snap Garrett. He may be in the chat still. Make sure you check him out. I'll post his link when we get done watching. But man, I love this shot right here. Wow.
Should have
What an
perched on the
amazing
guns.
shot. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. That was, man, really, really good cinematic stuff right there. Let me go ahead and, oh yeah, he is here. He is here. Awesome flight, brother. Really appreciate you sharing that as well. XJET, loved the battleship, man. That was all. I loved it too. That was fantastic. I'm telling you, man. Some of the people that share, some of the things I've seen just from people sharing, I'm just mind blown.
What was he flying? What was he flying on that flight? What drone were you using?
If I had to guess, I would say he was probably flying a 7-inch or larger, but we'll see what he says. Could have been a 5-inch. What were you flying there, Robert, for that flight? I'm going to post the video link as well. Make sure you guys check him out. Awesome pilot. Awesome stuff on his channel. And while we wait for him to go ahead and roll that, oh, here you go. Okay, Flywoo Explorer. That's a 5-inch, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a 4-inch. Wow.
Yeah. Analog for the win.
And he's got that RunCam Thumb Pro.
Yeah.
I saw it when I first saw his video that he shared with it. I thought it was a GoPro. I mean, it looked that good to me just, watching it on YouTube. I thought it was a GoPro.
Yeah, I use RunCam cameras on my drones because bang for the buck, $99 for a RunCam 5 Orange. And it's good enough. I guess good enough excellence is the enemy of good enough. I'm not going to spend hundreds of bucks on a GoPro, on a drone that's probably going to end up in the bottom of a river somewhere or lost forever. I'll spend cheap. And the RunCams, they're not the best, but they are good enough for me.
Man, I think they've come a long way. I mean, I've seen people use the RunCam. I think it's the RunCam 5, the box style. Kind of looks like the Sessions. Yeah, the RunCam oranges. Yeah. But throw an ND filter on there. They look fantastic. Yep, there it is. Absolutely. And $99. I mean, you really, I don't know of a camera that can actually beat it for the price to quality of what you get. I don't know if there's even anything out now that can even beat that right now.
I'm not sure the 4K on a lot of those cameras is true 4K. I think it's upscaled from 2.7 because when you pixel peep, there doesn't seem to be a lot of difference between 2.7K and 4K. I think they just make it bigger for the purposes of editing. It's when you compare it to something like the Insta360 and some of the real 4K cameras, there's a huge difference in the actual pixel level resolution. But it's good enough.
It's good enough, especially if you're smashing it around and you're crashing it and you're flying in places. I still fly mainly for freestyle, the DJI Action 2 camera, and I've really been happy with it as far as the size of it and the weight of it, and the quality I feel is good enough for sure for freestyle.
I've been using the Insta360 SMO 4K. That's like a Bones GoPro.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm quite impressed with that. It's got some really good image quality, and it's over 4K in resolution, and the software for the smoothing it out, the sort of like gyro flow type software is really good. It does a really good job. So a lot of my cinematic stuff where I'm not chasing models, I use that, and it works well. But they're expensive, hundreds of dollars.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I was the biggest fan of the GoPros for a while, especially when they had the Sessions. I mean, the Sessions was like to me that was like GoPro's best camera for FPV was the GoPro Session, and then they started putting out bigger and bigger and bigger. And then while yes, I do like the Mini 11, I still feel that for freestyle, for me, it's still a little bit heavy. I much rather prefer, my DJI Action 2 for freestyle flying. I do like the Mini 11 for chase footage, for cinematic stuff. It does have a one heck of a sensor. I love the sensor on it. The GoPro 11 sensor is very nice. But I've heard a lot of people having issues with the durability of the Mini 11 as far as when they crash it around. It seems to be anyway that it might not be the most reliable camera for getting smashed about. So
yeah, But the good thing about the GoPros is the higher frame rate, because if you want to do cinematic stuff, quite often you'll slow it down to get the cinematic effect and everything looks smoother. And that's one of the downsides of the Orange Runcam Cube thing, is it's only 30 frames a second in 4K. So that's another reason I run at 2.7 or 1440p, because I use 1440p 4.3, and then I can crop in and I can frame within the frame, so you get a lot more latitude in terms of your pitch setting, so you're able to move it up and down if you haven't got the horizon quite right. And and most people watching stuff 1080p, which is what you end up when you do that, that's the final resolution. 1080p is more than good enough. HD is fine.
Yeah, exactly. Just for sharing it on YouTube or a different social media platform. Absolutely. And yeah, I will do the same thing a lot of times. Robert had said, I will do the same thing. A lot of times I will record at 2.7K, and then when I go to export in my editor, I will upscale it to 4K and then just upload it right to YouTube. And that way it takes up way less space on my micro SD cards. It's way easier to edit it. It doesn't get so stumbly and bumbly when you're on your timelines and you're adding this and you're adding that. It can get a little processor intensive when you start using that 4K for sure.
What are you using to edit your videos?
Honestly, Bruce, I've been using, for the longest time, I was using Power Director Pro. It was my go-to. I used it on my phone, actually. Everything that I put on my channel has been edited on my cellular device, Android, Samsung Galaxy S22 Plus. Everything I've edited has been on my phone. However, here recently, I have noticed that the Power Director Pro has been struggling with some of the 4K footage that I've been getting from my Action 2 as well as my GoPro, and struggling so bad to where it just won't even let me put it on the timeline. It will say, not compatible, and then I got to sit there and try to convert it, which takes more time, and it's just annoying. So I actually here recently just switched over to the CapCut. I don't know if you've ever heard of CapCut, but it's actually a mobile editing software, very similar to Power Director Pro. I did go with the paid version because I like to have all the extras. I think it's like $5 every other month or something like that. And it's been working phenomenal. I've been able to drop like 4K straight off of a GoPro or my Action 2 right on the timeline. It reads it right away. I'm able to get through it and edit it just fine. That's what I've been using. What do you use mainly, Bruce?
I use DaVinci Resolve.
Nice.
And I started with the free version, but I, like most things, if I use something and make money out of it, I buy it because it's ethically the thing to do. And also you get a few extra features that you don't get in the free model. But it's really not. People say, oh, it's the best, isn't it? I say, like everything, it's not the best for everybody. I started with Movie Maker, Windows Movie Maker. I think most people back in the day used Windows Movie Maker. It came with Windows, and that was quite capable. It was just basically for chopping video into segments and joining them back up. It's all you needed back in the day of standard definition video. But I went to Sony Vegas, which was a really good, excellent video editing program. And then a company called Magix bought out the Vegas product, and they completely messed it up. They introduced a lot of bugs, and then they had this nagware thing where every time they released a new version, if you were on a previous version, it would pop up and say $29 to upgrade now. You had to click through it. I thought, life's too short. So I tried Adobe Premiere, and I just couldn't get my head around it. It just didn't suit me. And also I didn't like the concept of having to continuously pay for something. I wanted to buy it and own it. And so I tried DaVinci Resolve, and I used it for about 6 months, the free version. And then it was only $300 to buy it. And that was version 14. Now they're up to version 18.5. No upgrade fees. It's a one-time license forever. You get all the free upgrades and everything. It's brilliant. And now one of the features it's got, which has turned out to be really useful, is where I film most of my videos at the airfield. We've got a dirt bike track on one end and a go-kart track next door. So there's a lot of background noise sometimes. And it's got a voice isolation. So when people are talking, I can effectively cut out or reduce the noise in the background so you can hear them talk, which you couldn't do before. So fancy little features like that. But for most people, it's overkill because, like most programs, 90% of the people will use 10% of the functionality, and the rest of it just gets in the way as something confusing. So I think most people are probably suited to a simpler editor. Because the Resolve is a professional level tool, and I'm a I wouldn't say I'm a professional, but I get paid to edit videos effectively. So I like to do the best job I can. And I think the thing that differentiates good channels from bad channels is how much effort they put into actually making the video. A lot of people
Right.
film something on their phone and upload it. And it might be good stuff, but it's people are there for the experience. I mentioned in my last video that YouTube's becoming like television, and people are expecting the production standards and quality that they find on TV, on cable, on Netflix. And when they see something filmed with a smartphone and just uploaded, they tend to pay less attention to it. So you got to lift your production standards wherever possible.
I know, Bruce, and I'm at that point now where I'm like, oh man, like do I really need to go out and get a DSLR to like keep the channel going? Like, oh my gosh, that's like a whole nother hobby in itself. I've just been using like, you know, my smartphone or my GoPros or my action cameras to kind of do all the, you know, head talking and B-roll and stuff like that. And it's worked for many, many years, but I'm like, I wonder if I was to step it up and get like a DSLR type camera, how much the production value would really step up my channel. You know what I mean?
I don't think DSLRs are a good option, or mirrorless cameras are a good option for a lot of people. Certainly if you're filming models, if you're just filming like to camera things, that's fine. But I chose a camcorder. I've always used camcorders because when I go to the field, I take a camcorder. When someone goes with a mirrorless or a DSLR, they've got to take the camera, several different lenses, ND filters, and a whole lot of other ancillary stuff. And then they can only film for 20 minutes before it overheats. My camera runs for 4 hours continuously. It's got a zoom that will pull stuff in from miles away. I can just flick the ND filters. I've got fully manual control of shutter speeds, ISO, aperture, everything I want, all in one easy, convenient package to carry around. And that means I get shots that I wouldn't have got otherwise. You know, something is quite often something happens at a distance. You know, someone crashes a model and I'm zoomed right in, and then I can just pull straight around and watch their face without changing lenses or anything, because I just zoom out as I pull around. You can't do that with mirrorless and DSLR cameras. They just don't. They're not built for that. They're built for more setup shots. So for me, as I say, everyone, the best is different for everybody. For me, a camcorder is the best option.
Absolutely. And real quick, thank you so much, Dizzy Dean FPV, for the $5 super chat, making it rain up in here. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate the support tonight, brother.
So now you have to get around to his place and help him.
Absolutely. He's been having some issues with the with the Power Director Pro. Absolutely, man. I would be glad to try and help you. Reach out to me either via email, or we can try to do it here on the show if possible. But if I can't get it on the show, definitely reach out to me through email, or you can send me a private message in Discord or any of my social media platforms, and I will definitely try to get with you. And if you have the S22 as well, then you might want to consider, switching to the CapCut, because I noticed that as soon as I switched to the S22 Plus cell phone, the Power Director Pro just got really buggy, man. Like it wasn't working the way it used to work so smoothly and fluently. So CapCut has a free version just like Power Director, and it also has a paid version. So I would highly recommend looking into that if you're up to changing. And it works very similar. So if you're used to Power Director and the way it works, CapCut will feel pretty much right at home. It's pretty much laid out like almost the same. It's very similar. And Q&A is open, guys. So if you guys have any questions for Bruce, myself, or the chat, please go ahead and put those in, and we'll make sure we try to get to all your questions. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Curtis has been using DaVinci Resolve. Okay. He said super overkill. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you'd rather have a Ferrari and just drive it, 40 miles an hour, right? It's all right.
Yeah, it makes the learning curve steeper. If there's so much stuff in there, you've got to work your way around all the stuff you don't need. But there's a lot of good videos on YouTube about how to use DaVinci Resolve. Okay.
I will send you my email now. And I wanted to ask Bruce real quick, what's the exact camcorder that you use? Because I have actually really admired when you zoom into the models. It looks so clear. Like it looks crystal clear, and that's the camcorder that you're using.
Yeah, it's a Panasonic HCX 1500. So it's a prosumer. It's a top line. It was about, I think they're about $1,500 US. So they're not cheap. But again, if you compare it to a mirrorless camera, you buy the body, you buy the lenses, you buy the filters, it is still cheap.
That has everything you need.
Yep. It has four levels of ND filter. It has the zoom is from 35 to 600 mil effective, which is quite a long way. And it's got twin SD card slots, so you can either do parallel filming so I don't lose anything, or it'll do relay. So when the first slot's full, you switches to the second one. When I'm just running 128 gig cards. It does 4K at 200 megabits per second. It's got a 10-bit mode if you want to do super high color accuracy. And it does slow mo. It does everything that I want it to do.
Nice.
And so, as I say, the main thing is just convenience, though. It's yeah.
Absolutely, Bruce. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And that to me that sounds a lot more manageable for investing into something like that, and also easier to actually use when filming things in motion and things like that, than actually getting a DSLR and having to change lenses and filters. To me, that just sounded like a daunting task.
Yeah.
I was like, I kind of don't want to get into the DSLRs.
I've got some cars here. As I say, the other thing about this is that we'll film for 4 hours continuously without overheating. And it's got some cool modes, like it's got a 20-second rewind mode. So you can be just pointing the camera without recording. And if something happens, when you hit the record button, it will actually have recorded the previous 20 seconds. So you don't miss anything, because you don't want to be recording everything all the time. And if you're running low on the amount of space on your cards, for example, you can just switch to that mode, just follow all the action. And then when the action happens, you hit record and it goes back 20 seconds. So you get everything leading up to that as well. And that's kind of cool.
How many batteries do you have with that thing?
Well, I've got 2, but I've only ever used one. I usually get 2 or 3 weekends out of each battery. Because it's 4 hours out of a battery, 4 hours continuous.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Marcel asks, what do you think about the new AI FPV videos that have been coming out? Like his newest submission.
Oh, I haven't seen any of the AI ones yet. So, yeah, but AI is cool, isn't it? The best thing I like about AI is it's so easy to spell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and pull one up real quick, and we can show Bruce. Because I really think I would like to see what XJET thinks about the AI. It is very new. Get out of here real quick. I'll pull it up. Let's see. Oh, and Sefer, I definitely am going to get your receiver. We're going to get your receiver soldered on. I've got it on my bench. It's on my to-do list for sure, brother. We'll get her done. We'll get her done this week before I go away on my family trip to Disney. Yeah, things have been crazy busy, man. So much going on. Good things though. Good things. Yeah, let me pull up one of the AI videos. I believe Marcel posted it in my Discord, so we'll find that. Yeah, it's starting. Oh, there it is right there. It's starting to really kind of take over a lot with FPV footage. It's kind of I think it's a more creative way of sharing. There we go. Get this pulled up. Sorry for the background work, guys. This was a little bit unscheduled, but I still nevertheless would like XJET to watch the AI FPV, and we want to see what he thinks about it. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is Marcel's AI FPV video here, and we'll let it play through. So basically, he's flying FPV, but the AI has created all of this wonderful, magical, crazy-looking things that are happening that kind of make it more of a non-reality kind of FPV, if that makes sense.
So there's another way of spelling AI, LSD.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of feels like you're going through a crazy trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That is really something. And the thing is, I don't think you would ever see any that were like exactly alike. Like I think they're all going to be like different interpretations of the flights, you know. So that
Oh,
was
Bardwell is gate crashing.
oh man, yeah. Joshua Bardwell has got like the one of the strongest algorithms I've ever seen. It's insane, man.
Yeah, he does
And
good stuff. He's got some really good stuff, tutorial stuff, and his videos are really a huge asset to the community.
absolutely, yeah.
Mm.
Wonderful creator and such an awesome contributor in the hobby as well. Absolutely. Um, so what do you think? You think it's more? It definitely reminds you of like a LSD trip. Absolutely.
Yeah, not that I've ever had one of those, of course, answering King of the Kicks channel. But yeah, those things, I think there's a novelty value associated with them. But it's something that the first time you watch it, you go, wow, but I don't think I'd want to watch it more than a couple of times because and I've noticed with a lot of AI stuff, there's a certain sameness that you can see the common stuff coming through. But AI is a real interesting thing because it is going to change the world in some dramatic ways. Whether it's for the better or the worse, I don't know. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. A lot of people already have.
Yeah, that is a shame. I feel like it can be good to use as a tool in FPV. Let's just say that you're flying a location that maybe you fly all the time and you post the same place all the time. Mixing it up and throwing an AI flight in that same area every now and then, I feel would definitely mix it up and add a little bit more value, I think, to your content as far as in being interesting. But it's also one of those things where I think if you use it too much, it's going to get kind of played out and it's kind of going to lose its like wow factor.
Yeah, everything loses its wow factor once you've seen too much of it. I mean, it doesn't matter because when freestyle video first came out, I couldn't get enough of it. I remember, in fact, when it was who was it? There was Boris B. He used to fly freestyle way back in the day before, in proximity through forests and things. And that was great. I couldn't get enough of that. But now it looks so passe and everyone's doing it. And it's the same with, all the tricks and things. I don't watch many freestyle videos anymore because I've seen all the tricks and I focus more on the personality of the person presenting. Like I watch a lot of Bot Grinder because it's different. He's different. He's not to everyone's taste, but he's sort of, so different that it's interesting and it remains interesting. But a lot of stuff gets pretty samey. I mean, I did a video last week flying in the park through the trees. Nobody wants to watch that, right? So I had to spice it up in some way. So I got Arnie to actually make an appearance rather than just be a voice in the background, my spotter. And so hopefully that will just get people to take a look at the video. They might find something in there. A lot of the videos, I put little Easter eggs in. I might put signage on vehicles or hide something somewhere and just see how many people notice what I'm doing. Of course, I use visual effects to do that. But these days I could just use AI and it would be so simple. It would take me a couple of minutes to do an AI query and get it done. But I prefer to do it by hand and just, enjoy the experience of creating some kind of special visual illusion.
Bot Grinder is amazing. He's so entertaining and he has such a creative mind that he can turn what most people would look at a location and say, man, this is a dull, boring location. He could turn it into the coolest, funnest, hippest place you ever saw, just with his creativity. And like Vampire as well, coming up with the whole the soccer ball whoop the game, and it's just amazing how when people just have creativity, it can really change things and make a video that would typically just be you flying around an open grass field. You just add a couple things here and there and add some creativity to it, and it makes it completely interesting to where you're just engaged the whole time. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where YouTube's going. It's all about personalities now. I mean, you look at the top rating channels, PewDiePie and Mr. Beast. It's about people. It's not about things. It's about people. So that's why I think, again, hobby videos are declining in popularity because we tend to focus, or most people focus more on a model plane or a drone or a model helicopter. And these are things people see everywhere. That's why a lot of my videos, I focus on the people that are flying them. It's more about the people and what they do than what they're actually doing. It's, everyone's seen a particular type of ready to fly model before, but when it's in the hands of somebody and it's presented in a way that focuses on how they're using it and the fun and the humor and the laughter, that's, I think, makes a difference.
Absolutely, Bruce. And I wanted to ask you as well, while we wait for some more questions to come in, I wanted to ask you as well, when you first got into FPV, were you still pretty much sharing on YouTube? Was that pretty much already a hobby that was set in, or were you already doing YouTube and then, you got an FPV like kind of after?
Yeah, my first YouTube videos, I think, were mainly about pulse jet engines and things, which is why it was called XJET. And then, there were some of my first videos included FPV, because there were a lot of fixed wing FPV flying going on at the time. And that was the days when you didn't have a receiver built into your goggles. You had a receiver on a pole and wires came down and plugged into your goggles, the old Fat Shark base editions. I've still got those. And actually, I tried them on the other day and I was surprised how well they worked. 42-degree field of vision. Plastic lenses made the edges a bit colored, fringy, but they actually worked, and they were quite low resolution, but with analog that doesn't matter so much. And so we've come a long way, but in some ways we haven't come that far at all, because we used to get really good range back in the old days by having our antennas and receivers up on a pole. That few extra meters of elevation gives you much better coverage than having the antenna on your head.
Okay, absolutely. And you've been doing YouTube for a while now, so I would like to ask you as well. Hey, welcome in, Wallbanger. Good to see you as well. I want to ask you, let's say you have somebody who's brand new, into getting into YouTube, and they're into the RC hobby, whether it be, radio controlled cars, trucks, FPV, what have you, just anything radio controlled. And they've decided that, they want to start a brand new YouTube channel in 2023. What's the best advice that you could give them to set them up, you think, for a successful channel?
Include lots of scantily clad women. That worked for me with RC Model Reviews. Got the channel going. Or at least the promise of it.
That's good. That always works, right?
Yeah. The problem is these days is that it's kind of unfair, because when I started, there weren't a lot of channels dealing with RC models. So you didn't have to be very big to be big. And there's a lot of legacy. I think I've got my combined subscriber base between the two channels about 400,000, and I've got 140 million views, 140 million views, and that's accumulated over a lot of time. It sounds really impressive, wow. But if you look at it, for my XJET channel with nearly 190,000 subscribers, videos will vary from maybe 4,000 views to 20,000 views on average. So only a tiny percentage of those subscribers actually watch the videos. And that's the way it is. So when small channels start out, it's really good to see some channels with like 4,000 subscribers getting 10,000 views per video. But it's not common. The problem is you start out, you're just one tiny tree in a massive forest. How are you going to stand out? And you've got to make stuff that's really, really compelling and interesting. When I made stuff, you just had to make stuff because there was nothing else to watch. If someone wanted to watch a model airplane being flown, they had my channel or perhaps a couple of others. That's all they had. So they subscribed to me. Now, there's such a big choice that it's very difficult for new channels to get going. And it's going to have to rely very much on the personality of the person presenting to have that sort of that wow factor, that difference. And that's where Botgrinder's done really well. He's coming reasonably late, but because he is so different and such a strong personality, people watch his channel and they subscribe and they support him on Patreon because they get value from it. It has really captured them.
Absolutely, Bruce. Great information there. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it is incredibly hard to stand out now in any kind of RC, or any kind of RC channel on YouTube nowadays. It seems like it's way harder to stand out because there's just been so many that have already done it before. Do you think that that's mainly just because of the growth of the hobby and how much content we're seeing and we've been exposed to? Or do you think maybe some of that also has to do with YouTube itself? Because I kind of feel like sometimes YouTube itself tends to take niches and just kind of hide them and kind of take the more, popular type creators and flourish them, because they're getting way more exposure, but the small niches just kind of get blanketed.
Yeah, it's partly because you got to remember YouTube's all about the money, just like everybody else. And if they show a particular genre of video that attracts advertisers more, they're going to make more money. For every view of a video that attracts high value advertisers, they earn more dollars. If they're going to show some guy flying a drone in a park and the advertisers are just the bottom of the keg, because no one chooses that, because you don't see people advertising apart from the scammy little drones that were developed by ex-DJI engineers and sort of the rubbish ones, the scam drones. You don't see many drone manufacturers advertising on YouTube. So there's not a market for putting ads on the content we create. So we'll always get second tier, third tier. They want to show videos where there's high value advertisers so they make more money. So we'll never get promoted as heavily as other sort of genres of video. And that's something we just it's a fact of life. We can't avoid that. So when you look at it, people probably pay good money to be on PewDiePie because he's a big popular channel, and good money to be on Mr. Beast because he gets 20 million views a video, and they want to be there where the numbers are. They don't want to pay to have their ad on a video that's going to get 300 views. And so it's hard to bootstrap yourself up into that league now. It was easy a long time ago, but it's not easy now.
So something I've been thinking about for a while, and I would love to see it come to fruition. I feel like I would love to see where FPV would start to open up a whole nother, what do you want to call it? Genre. FPV would open up a whole nother genre that would cater and be very interesting to young people, right? To be able to get younger audiences into the hobby sooner, because I feel like that is where you would see a huge amount of growth in the hobby. Because when I look at people making like videos for kids, whether it be running around dressed up in funny masks or whatever, because my fiance, her 10-year-old daughter, she watches a lot of that stuff. And I mean, they get millions of views. I could throw on a costume and run around the house and have somebody filming me just running around acting like some kind of crazy character and put it on a kid's channel, and it would get millions of views, So I wonder if a lot of the market on YouTube is actually kids, like younger kids.
Yeah, it's a difficult market though, because YouTube asks you, is this video made for kids? And it can actually be quite a bad thing, because you've got a lot more restrictions on videos that are made for kids. It's much harder to make money out of videos that are made for kids. And if you want to use your channel as a way to make money, that becomes quite difficult. So most people take the safer route and just say, no, it's not made for kids. And also there's other things like, if you want to foster community, videos for kids don't have comments enabled. There's all those things. And then again, if a kid decides they are going to get interested, then you've got the regulatory hurdles to get past. Parents are going to say, oh, no, we don't want you doing that, because we're going to have to, take you to a field somewhere miles from anywhere, or we're going to have to. It just becomes so difficult now. Whereas it used to be, when little Johnny got a model airplane, the community was happy, and they, in fact, at one stage, there were major auto dealers in America were sponsoring the Nationals. You had Dodge and Chrysler was sponsoring the Nationals because it was such a wholesome family activity. Now they'd run a mile from anything to do with drones.
Yeah, I feel like Nick Burns actually promoted. I believe it was Mr. Tiny Whoop, Jesse Perkins. He actually promoted an event. Not an event, but a charity cause, where they were actually taking into children's hospitals for children who had cancer and some kind of ailment that was bringing them down, right? That was keeping them in the hospitals. They actually brought in these little FPV cars, and they were raising money. They were trying to get donations to go towards funding of bringing in these little FPV cars, and this is the ones where they have the goggles and the controller and basically everything they need to be able to actually like drive these little cars around their hospital room with FPV. I could see something like that, like with the whoops, just make it so super simple, easy for a kid to be able to pick up and fly FPV, have it be stabilized if needed, whatever needs to make it just the easiest, funnest experience to get more kids involved in the hobby. And here's the thing, Bruce, as long as they're flying inside, they don't have to worry about the FAA at all, right?
Yeah, it's true. The problem is that at that grade, at that level, a lot of kids just see them as toys. I think I go to a lot of schools and I do presentations to the schools that usually primary, like 6, 7, 8 year olds, young kids that are really easily influenced. And I take along a whoop and I have a couple of screens that they can hold and watch while we fly it around. And they get all excited and enthusiastic, but it's never really turned into creating a desire for them to get involved in the hobby. They see it as an interesting thing, but they don't instantly go, oh, I want one of those. I want to do that. Whereas when I take my passenger goggles to the park and you get an adult involved, suddenly they have a real appreciation of what's involved, and probably because the experience is much more mind-blowing with the goggles and things. Because even getting into the lower tiers of things is still quite expensive for a lot of kids, a lot of families. We've got a lot of families out there that are not as, the wealth isn't as evenly spread as it once was. So a lot of kids don't have that option of saying to mum and dad, I'd like a drone, buy me a drone, and they buy a drone. And my focus has been to quite a degree on trying to balance things out. I mean, this whole thing, people are getting richer. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. AI is going to make that even worse because the people that have the AI will be displacing the jobs of the people who used to do it manually. I can see some pretty bad things happening if we don't manage this very well. I'm not a fan of regulation, but I think we have to be very cautious as we move forward, because otherwise those who have access to use the AI will be getting really rich because they don't have to employ people anymore. And those people will be becoming really, really poor because they don't have jobs. So this whole thing is really, we're not managing things very well. And this scales right down through our entire society. When I was a kid, there weren't any rich kids in school. There weren't any really poor kids in school. Everyone was about the same. Now there's that huge stratification within a classroom. I go to a classroom, you can see the kids that are obviously, their parents are just make and do. And you can see the kids that are and come from families that are really upper middle class and they've got the flash clothes and I don't know. There are some kids that will probably say yes, but I was disappointed with the level of uptake from kids when you present the technology to them.
That's surprising. Yeah, I would think that they would be more interested once they saw it, but I guess the wow factor is just going to be a little bit more difficult for kids. Not only that, but I guess, thinking about myself as a kid and then thinking about my own stepdaughter as well, she tends to get into things hard, but not for very long. Like she'll be into something for maybe like a day or two or maybe a week, and then she's moving on to something else. And I was the same way when I was a kid. I would move on to one thing and then another thing. And I guess it's just when you're a kid, you just like to explore and you get tired of things maybe easier and quicker than an adult, I guess.
Thing. A kid buys a drone, flies a drone, gets stuck in a tree, do something else. That's it. Yeah. That's what generally happens. And they get stuck in trees, they get blown away. They're not something that's not like a model car, which you're not going to lose the damn thing. But with a drone, a lot of kids do lose them, and that just kills the joy for them because they have to buy another one and they're not cheap. Even the cheap ones are not cheap.
Well, maybe the answer would be, in the future, when kids go to the stores and stuff to buy, well, if there still is stores in the future and everything's not just Amazon warehouses, and maybe when kids go to the store, it'd be nice to see more FPV implemented in the RC world, right? Like in the model cars and stuff like that, to where it would kind of open up that whole world of FPV to them at a younger age, And then maybe they could naturally just progress into the drones as they got older because, I used to fly, with the goggles in my little car around the house or whatever and outside in my yard. And that was really fun because, I felt like I was in the car, I felt like I'm driving the car. Take the same concept and just apply it into the drones maybe.
I think a lot of kids got into the hobby when I was young, got into the hobby because their parents were in the hobby, and even now within the community in New Zealand, I know a lot of people that fly now got into the hobby as a result of their father's involvement in the hobby. But if we're going to see a general contraction in the adult population, then there's not going to be those adults to pass it on to their kids as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Yep. And that tends to be pretty much any hobby usually that, your parents are involved in. You're naturally going to be curious as to, what's dad doing out in the garage, or what's mom doing out here or out there. You're going to be interested and want to know what they're getting involved in. And then obviously if you've got the passion, then you're going to share that, with the child. So that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everything's working against us. It's kind of it's a conspiracy of events, because as people in the chat have been saying, hobby shops are really no longer a thing anymore. It used to be that there was a model shop in town. You go and you'd see the things you wanted to save up and buy, the model kit sets and the motors and all that sort of stuff. And now you can see it online, but it's just not the same as being able to reach out and touch it. It's like, oh, it's a picture of something. It's not actually a thing. It's a picture of something. And so I think that the demise of the local hobby shop has also seen a decline in the hobby. Sure, you can buy things super cheap from China, but you don't get an 8-year-old buying stuff from China. But 8-year-olds did save their pocket money and go down to the hobby shop and buy the kit set model or whatever.
It was the whole experience of, I saw it on the shelf. I was blown away. I couldn't wait to have it in my hands. And I worked hard and I saved my money to go back into that store, hand them the money and take that off the shelf. Like that was the gratification right there. Yeah. John's got a good point there.
That's it. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you do have to learn. And that's, I think, why like the DJI drones, the camera drones have become so popular, because it is instant gratification. You take it out of the box, you charge the battery, you plug it in, and you can fly it. Because unless you do anything, it doesn't do it. It stays where it is. You don't have to know how to fly it. It's not like a freestyle drone where you've got to be able to use the muscle memory. You just push the stick up and it goes up, push the stick down, it goes down. It's super simple, no training required. And that's why they've become so popular. It's also why we've had so many problems, because people haven't learned any of the background about, don't go too high, there are planes up there, don't go over there, there are people over there. That's where this whole thing is sort of, well, the problems have combined to produce the situation we've got now.
So what we really need next, because, I will be the first one to admit, even though I don't own a DJI FPV drone or a Nevada, I will still be the first one to say that I was very excited when they came out, because I knew it was going to open up the hobby to a lot more people that typically wouldn't have gotten FPV. So I would love to see like DJI next put out something FPV wise that's smaller, made for like indoors, and maybe a little bit more of a younger demographic attracted to. Maybe I think that would be awesome to have something smaller. Maybe they could fly around inside. They wouldn't have to worry about any regulation, right? Because as long as you're flying it inside, you don't have to worry about a remote ID or registering, as long as it's under 250 and you're flying for recreation. As long as you're indoors, you don't have to worry about any of that.
Trouble is, not many people have access to the large indoor spaces required to enjoy something. You can get a tiny whoop and fly indoors, really small. But if you've got something like a 250 gram or 249 gram model, it's going to be bigger. But I think a sub 250 Avata would be a real seller, a real money spinner, because it's going to let people do everything without the registration, remote ID, without all that crap. And also, smaller is safer.
Exactly. I agree. I would love to see DJI come out with something like that. And speaking of DJI, I wanted to touch on it just a little bit, but, I think this whole, blacklisting them because of the whole spying thing is just utter, complete garbage. It's ridiculous. It's
part of
the U.S. trying to push their agenda once again. You got these politicians who have been given a fat check from Skydio, and they're trying to basically do away with the competition in a very terrible way to be able to dominate the market here in the U.S. It's not going to happen, because people, law enforcement, hobbyists, commercial pilots, all know that DJI offers the best when it comes to camera drones, when it comes to reliability, when it comes to safety, when it comes to performance. Overall, Skydio is just not there yet. It's just not there.
It's called competition by legislation. When you can't compete on a feature price performance basis, you just legislate your product to be available while the others aren't. It's kind of a trade cold war, and it's going on between China and the US, because China's banned Micron devices from the USA as a tit for tat and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse until the point where you've basically broken all economic ties between the two countries. And I would rather see people compete on the basis of making a better product at a lower price that makes people happy and want to buy it. And if America can't do that, because the big problem is, of course, that when drones were being developed, America, the government and the industry said, nothing, we don't care, it's not important. The only companies that were actually doing anything in the States were like 3D robotics with the Iris and the Solo and things. And even they had to move down to Mexico to make some of the stuff. And the USA said, anything you do make, you can't export because of the regulations on arms and so forth. So basically, they gave the ball to China and said to China, here, if you think these are going to be big, you build them. And they did. And now they're going, oh my God, we're decades behind. What can we do? We'll legislate to protect ourselves.
And they dominated the market. They're no more intrusive than an iPhone or a Samsung. It's just ridiculous. The whole security thing is just pull the wool over people's eyes so we can try and blindside this company so we can go ahead and dominate the market now, not because we have a better product, but because we're just going to just outright just ban this company from being able to use these drones here in the States. Absolutely ridiculous. I urge everyone, and I'm going to be doing one as well, to send letters, emails to your local representatives about how ridiculous that this legislation is. And how our law enforcement needs the most reliable, best technology, and our first responders as well. They need the best when it comes to saving people's lives, search and rescue, people doing commercial jobs. We need the safest drones in the skies. We need the most reliable drones in the skies. And DJI has proven to be that company. It is what it is. That is the way it is.
From the perspective of a politician, safety is one of their top 10 priorities after money, graft, all the other stuff. Safety will never trump money. We've seen that. And I didn't mean to use the word Trump, but it's just that's it. Again, everything points to this thing. If it was about safety, it'd be safety, but it's not. It's about money. And if you're going to say to the first responders, well, you can't use the best tool for the job, you've got to use this one. Mm-hmm. You're saying safety is secondary to money.
Absolutely, Bruce. Absolutely. And that just can't happen. So I urge you guys, please try to help and send an email to your local representatives, to your congressman. If you live in a state where, I believe Florida, if you live in Florida, please send your letters, send your emails.
Make a TikTok video. Make a TikTok video about it.
Make a video. Do something, because this is just complete and utter crap is what it is. And, we need to have the best when it comes to our technology for our first responders, our law enforcement. We need to have the most reliable, the best technology in the sky. And that's DJI. It just is. When it comes to camera drones and it comes to first responders and the commercial grade type drones, DJI is far superior with the technology and the reliability. It just is. So hopefully that ridiculous, legislation will not pass. Hopefully someone will see the light and say, no, this isn't right. Someone's trying to push some agendas here, and hopefully it gets overturned and we don't have to worry about it. But I feel like DJI has just been constantly been targeted here over the last couple years by our politicians and lawmakers. They've just been constantly targeted because they've dominated the market. They've completely dominated the UAV market, and they know it. They know it. But they dominated because they're good, because the technology works, because they're reliable, not because, they're spying on us any more than your iPhone is in your pocket.
Exactly. You think American technology is not spying on China when they use it?
Exactly.
It's hypocrisy again. Do as we say, not as we do.
Yeah. So I would love to see this ridiculous, legislation just get thrown out, and then we as consumers should have the freedom to use whatever we want to use. We should have the choice. First responders should have the choice. You want to use this or you want to use this. Period. We should have choices. It shouldn't be a forced thing.
But it's an interesting thing. I mean, I've got lots of American friends, I value their friendship great deal. I went to America in 2003, last time I went there, I think. And I found an interesting contrast looking from someone who doesn't live there, that all the individual Americans that I met were fantastic people. And they voiced their outrage at the way the government was treating them and the things that were being done in the name of freedom and democracy, but which were actually completely reversed to that. And then I said to them, well, why don't you stand up and speak out about it? And they said, oh, that'd be unpatriotic. It's like they can say it privately and quietly amongst themselves, but they're not prepared to make a stand and stand up and make a noise, because that would be seen to be unpatriotic, un-American to do so. And that's something I think the politicians use to their favor, use to their advantage. The fact that everyone is taught patriotism, salute the flag, America is the best and whatever, and you must not go against that. You've been indoctrinated. That is what you must never criticize America. We are always the best. And if you're going to criticize them, do it privately amongst yourselves, but not on a public platform. And I think there's still a lot of that goes on, doesn't it?
Well, I think it depends on, what right we feel is being infringed, right? Because you take a look at the guns, right? Take a look at the guns and how many restrictions they've put on the guns and how much of outrage has been displayed on social media. There's been appeals and lawsuits, and there's been a lot of fighting back and forth over, is this infringement? This is infringement upon our Second Amendment, or our right to bear arms. The right to bear arms is such a vague term. And the gray areas of, well, you have the right to bear arms, but only if they're these arms and they don't have this many arms. And
that was misinterpreted. That's a misinterpretation of the Constitution. What happened was when the forefathers came to America, they anticipated the rise of quadcopters and FPV. And what they want to say, you've always got a right to run the wires under your arms and have the ESCs on a 4-in-1. You don't have to have the ESCs on the arms. You can have bare arms.
Exactly. You always have the right to your bare arms. Yeah. So I think that, there's plenty of people that are willing to stand for their amendments, right? Their actual the amendments that are in the Constitution. Well, unfortunately, right now, drones are just not there. They're just not in our Constitution. And I really wish they were, because I feel like we should have an amendment that says I have the right to bear drones. I have the right to bear my model aircraft. I have the right to bear my RC,
The interesting thing is, you cannot put a gun on a drone. That's illegal. Right? But you could build a flying gun because that's a constitutional right.
Exactly. There you go. See, it's the do as I say, not as I do.
But even then, I mean, governments with firearms, I was a licensed firearms owner for many years. I enjoyed my shooting, my hunting, my plinking, everything. I had SKS and bolt action rifles, semi-autos, the whole range, because I lived out in the country. It was great. I really enjoyed it. And I, like most gun owners, realized that guns aren't a problem. It's people that are a problem. Guns are inanimate objects that do nothing unless someone uses them in a bad way. And here in New Zealand, we had an event at a mosque where someone basically did an act of terrorism and shot a whole lot of people in a mosque. And the government's response was to ban all semi-automatic centerfire weapons in New Zealand, right? So, but the thing is that on investigation, the reason this happened was because when you apply for a permit to own a gun, a gun license in New Zealand, you have to sit a test, and the police do a background check. They vet you. They talk to your friends and your wife and colleagues and things to make sure you're a fit and proper person. That's part of the thing. You pay money to have them do this. So this guy that committed this atrocity, he applied for a firearms license. He got his license. It turns out that the police didn't actually do the background test like they are required to under law. And if they'd done the check, he would never have been given a license to go and buy these guns. So the police were responsible for this massacre because they didn't do their job. But every law-abiding firearms owner in the country was penalized because they took their semi-automatic rifles off them. This is not the way it should work. Why should the people who have done nothing be punished for the crimes of those who were supposed to do something and didn't? And that's just the way it works. But it's an overall thing around the world. Governments increasingly want to restrict the availability of firearms for the very reason that America has a Second Amendment. Because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it may be the people's only protection from overbearing government.
Yeah, and the thing about it that really bothers me is, they keep taking away more and more and more. And what's going to stop them from one day just banning all firearms altogether? Oh no,
Yeah.
you can't buy any firearms now unless you're, law enforcement or whatever. It's getting to a point now where people are angry, people are upset, people are scared because it's like, oh well, you were able to buy a 30-round magazine for your AR-15 so you could go out and target shoot with your friends at the range, but now you can't. Now you're not legally allowed to have a 30-round magazine because so-and-so decided to go out and have a mass shooting. Well, do you think the so-and-so cares if he can go to the store and buy a 30-round mag? No. He's going to get that 30-round mag off the street, just like he's going to get the firearm that's not registered, or he's not going to get that firearm more than likely through the legal proper channels, the legal way.
This is what we do. This relates back to drones, because bad actors are not going to fit remote ID to their drones. So it's completely ineffective. It only affects law-abiding people who are not the problem. So you're not going to change the behavior of bad actors, because anything you can do with the drone that would injure somebody or damage property is already illegal.
Exactly. Like we talked about earlier, with the people flying the DJI drones at the stadium. This is not the person that's going to go, put a remote ID broadcaster on their drone and go, okay, I'm going to go fly in the stadium now.
Yep.
No,
also,
they're going to disable everything on that drone, and they're going to use that drone to do whatever their intentions are. You got people that are using drones to fly contraband in and out of prisons. You think they're going to go put a remote ID broadcaster on? No.
But even then they say, oh, this is a big problem, drones dropping drugs in prisons. The vast majority, I think a figure I saw was that 97% or something of all contraband smuggled into prisons is done by prison officers. You're going to ban prison officers?
But that's not as exciting of a headline as, oh, contraband dropped by drone, Yeah. That's not as exciting as a headline. Yeah. The media.
The other one that people say to me often is, oh, but you could put explosives on one of these drones and you could kill somebody, you blow them up. And my response is, well, if that's the case, if someone puts explosives on a drone and uses it to do a bad thing, you haven't got a drone problem. Where the hell did they get the explosives?
Yeah.
It's an explosives problem.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go through the proper registration when they're fitting explosives to their drone.
Exactly, and a drone without a bomb is just a drone, but a bomb without a drone is still a bomb.
Yeah. Are you a bad actor or a patriot for not using remote ID? And I wanted to go ahead and go there as well. Because it is a thing, and you actually made a really good video on it. I did put a piece of that video in the intro for you, but let's go ahead and talk about non-compliance, because it's going to be a thing. We're going to see, I think, a lot of mass non-compliance with this.
Although I think it's probably going to be more people talking the talk than walking the walk. Because look at registration. A lot of people say, oh, I'm never going to register. But if you look, a lot of people have registered. And a lot of people who said they weren't going to register ended up registering, because it's just the easy way. It's just, and this is the whole thin end of the wedge strategy, which the regulators and bureaucrats have used. It's a textbook way of doing it. First of all, they said, just register, it's only going to be $5 and just register. And that's all you'll have to do. And it will hold people accountable. And then this whole problem will go away. We won't have these bad actors because we'll be able to, they'll be held accountable. And then they said, oh, okay, now just sit this test, a trust test. It'll make sure you're educated. So you have register, sit a test. Now they're saying, well, remote ID, that will hold people accountable. But hang on a minute. Weren't we promised that with registration? Did you not know what you were doing, or did you lie to us? If you don't know what you're doing, then how do you know what you're doing now? And if you lied to us, why should we trust you this time? And then so it just goes on. And the next thing will be, well, you've been using broadcast remote ID on your drones for 2 years now. And all we need you to do now is just switch to network remote ID. And yes, you will have to pay to arm and fly, but you've already been using this technology, and it's just the wedge gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And the easiest time to stop that wedge is when it's at its thinnest. We've missed that opportunity. People should have just said to registration, no, until you prove to us by way of a risk assessment and a benefits analysis that registration is justified, we're just not going to do it. You have an obligation as a regulator to prove to us that these regulations are just. And it's no obligation on us to just assume it. The burden of proof lies with you. You've failed to reach that burden of proof. We're not going to do it. But people are just so soft.
No, I agree. And the risk assessment it hasn't been done. It hasn't been done. It's not there. It won't be done. No. And you know, the thing is, when you talk about registering versus the remote ID, I do agree that yes, there probably will be more people that will say that they are going to be non-compliant, but actually will end up being compliant. However, I think there's going to be a huge difference between $5 and $50, or well, at your best bet, $50 per drone. You know, and that's the best case scenario. We've seen it way more than that.
Yeah.
So now you're talking about, you know, quite a bit more money to be able to be compliant now. I think that's going to keep way more people to push on the side of non-compliance, just due to the huge gap in, you know, how much this is going to cost people.
There's an interesting thing going to happen, though, because the FAA has been very slow with granting FRIA status. I think I've only seen or heard of one FRIA that's actually been allocated. Quite a few have been declined. So they've only got 3 months to authorize all the FRIAs for the AMA. I don't think they're going to get it done, which means come the 16th of September, AMA members, if they want to continue to enjoy the insurance and the benefits of the organization, will have to fit remote ID to all their models if they don't fly to FRIA, and there won't be any FRIAs. So that by default, even the AMA members are going to have to buy these things and fit them. And once they've got them and fitted, then the FAA will probably say, we don't really need FRIAs anymore because you guys are already using remote ID. So we're going to basically just discontinue that FRIA thing, and those that haven't got them, you'll have to buy them. And then next week, it's network.
Yeah. It's a shame, you know, that the FRIA was basically just like, you know, the smoking gun. The FRIA was just like, oh, you know, we're going to offer these FRIAs so you won't have to worry about remote ID. But then when they actually came to be about people applying for it, oh, now we're only going to do, you know, what would they say, 200 for the whole country?
I think it's 2,000. But the thing is, the AMA,
yeah, for the whole country. That's like nothing. Yeah. That's like nothing.
There's 2,500 AMA clubs. There are 110,000 educational institutions running STEM programs. 2,500 FRIAs is not going to cut it. It's not even going to cover the AMA's needs. And you've got all the other CBOs. But the AMA, I believe, has sold the hobby down the gurgler, because they have looked at it, what's best for the AMA. The FRIAs were a godsend to the AMA. When the FAA said, we'll make you a CBO and give you exclusive privilege to operate areas where people can fly without remote ID, they saw ka-ching, ka-ching. If people want to fly without remote ID, they'll have to join us, pay our subs, and only fly at our flying fields. But that's fantastic. We've got a captive audience. So the AMA has been in there basically lining its pockets by cooperating with the FAA. Instead of standing up and saying, our members will not register, we don't have to. They're already registered with us. That's all they need to do. We should be exempt from registering with you because our members are registered with us. They didn't take that stand because they saw the opportunity further down the track. They've been promised this. We'll give you special privilege based on your community-based organization status. So you'll be able to get more members, more money, more power, more prestige, whatever it is. They just sold the hobby because the hobby's changed too. There was a time when the hobby was the AMA. Almost everyone that flew models was a member of the AMA. But now it's a tiny fraction. How many drones are registered? 1 million drones or something? And the AMA's got 200,000 members. It's a fraction of the hobby. So they have they no longer represent everybody that flies models, but they're acting as if they do.
Yeah, that makes sense, because they seem to be the only, you know, one in the room that doesn't want to help the FPV community.
Well, they haven't really. They said they were going to support the lifting the level to 1 kg, but they've said to the members, don't write to your representative.
Yeah, so they're contradicting what they're saying.
Yeah, because if it was raised to 1 kg, more people could get by without being members of the AMA and flying at a FRIA.
Right.
Shoot themselves in the
foot. Should be less money in their pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not a business, but it is an organization that pays its employees. And so money is always, even to a non-for-profit, money is still a factor.
So what is the answer moving forward, do you think? What is the best, what is our best shot that we have into just being able to still have a hobby where we're not, you know, being asked to do ridiculous things? Is the answer just mass non-compliance to where they just can't keep up because there's just so many people that are not complying?
Well, they're very clever in that regard because there's fines, massive fines, way beyond the scope of any risk involved. And, the FAA has the ability to levy huge fines. I mean, look at Mikey from Philly Drone Life. It was 125,000 they were going to throw at him in fines. They can do that. And if they have levels of non-compliance that exceed their ability to enforce it, what they do is they then go and pick some poor sod and make an example of him and say, we're going to throw the book at you as a warning to others that might also be non-compliant. That's totally unfair. And I don't see, or those people have said they might do, I don't see anyone setting up a support fund to pay that person's fines. The community won't rally around and put millions of dollars in a pot to cover the fines of people that are caught not doing it. So I think non-compliance, it's a great idea. It is one way forward, but I don't think it's going to get the acceptance that we hope it might get. The other way is just letting things take their natural course, because when cars first came along, you had to walk, had a man in front with a red flag, you had to fire a gun 100 yards before an intersection in case there were horses coming. There were some crazy rules associated with cars because they were incredibly dangerous, that we were told. In reality, it was the industry that supported horses and carriages and things that were lobbying the politicians at the time. We don't want these horseless carriages, no. So it's a similar situation. But as we've seen over time, when the full scale of the risk was appreciated, or lack of risk was appreciated by the people who wanted to use the product and the public in large, the rules were scaled back. You don't have to have a red flag in front of your car. You don't have to fire a gun before you reach an intersection anymore. We've got more sensible rules that are commensurate with levels of risk. That will happen with drones as well. Eventually, I'm picking in about 7 or 8 years' time, when all the venture capital companies that put money into pilotless air taxis and drone delivery have lost their money. And suddenly there isn't this skies clouded with unmanned aerial systems. They're going to step back and say, oh, we overreacted and no one's been killed by one of these recreational drones. There's no aircraft brought down. Maybe it is time to look at this and review this and see if we change things. That's the natural level. Or we can just get highly political and try and lobby and push and educate the public, because ultimately the public are the only ones that can make a change. Politicians will basically do whatever they're told to by people with lots of money, unless it means losing their position of not being elected. Voters count at election time. Just that day before election time is the only time you count, but you have ultimate control then. And if we can convince voters to say, we want this change, and if you don't give us this change, we'll put someone else in, then the politicians will listen. But only for that brief window before an election, and we've got to time it properly and get the public on our side, which is why we've got to spend a lot more time, effort, and probably money educating the public. Going out there with their goggles in the park and talking to people and diffusing it. Because I've had people come to me and say, you're spying on me with that drone. And I say, no, put these goggles on. Let's have a look. See that person over there? Can you recognize them? Yes. Well, okay, put these goggles on. Look through my camera. Can you recognize them? No. Yeah, you can't see much through these cameras. They're wide-angle cameras. You can't actually see much. And so let's go and fly over and see how close we have to get before you can actually recognize them. Now, do you think they've noticed there's a drone there? Of course they have. It's bloody 15 yards away from them. And you're trying to educate them. And every time I do that, people suddenly realize, and they go away happy, oh, okay, you're not spying on me. And they'll tell their friends, no, I've seen through these drones. They don't spy on you. And you've got to, but it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, the time, and we've got to put in. And I spend a lot of time doing this, not on camera, just in the local community. And that's why when I'm flying my drone in the park, people just walk past and go, g'day, Bruce, how are you? Because they've all had a look.
That's an awesome idea as well, and definitely a great statement to be able to share the hobby with others who don't know about the hobby, who may have just insecurities about it because they just don't know. They think of drones as being one way, and once they're shown that they're not that way, they have a tendency to feel a lot better about it. Hey, what's up, Lamone? Welcome in, brother. Good to see you, man. Absolutely. And check out Lamone's channel as well, guys. He's just recently fired up a new live stream that you want to make sure you check out. Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, Bruce is an absolute legend in our hobby and such a voice for our community. And the fact that he lives in New Zealand, and has such a voice for us over here, right? So we need to be in support of Bruce, and he's trying his best to stand up for our hobby, and we need to rally around Bruce and do the same thing. So we need to get out here and share the love of the hobby and share the hobby. Introduce it to people who don't know about FPV, who don't know about drones. They may only know what they've seen on a news broadcast. They may only know what they've read in an article. We have to share it. Yeah, definitely check out Lamoon's channel as well and his live streams. And make sure you check out Bruce's channel down in the video description, guys. Make sure you go down there, make sure you're subscribed, and click that bell icon so you get notified when Bruce puts out new content, because he's got some awesome content coming on the ADS-B receiver that he's got there. It's going to be open source, so you guys are going to be able to get in on that. And I'm definitely very interested in getting one of those bad boys, because I just think you can never be too safe, right? If we have an extra layer of security to prevent an incident, because all it's going to take is one incident, and things are going to escalate like crazy. The FAA is going to roll with that and say, "Aha! Now I've got the ammunition to use against you to push our agenda with Amazon and Walmart and UPS."
But we need to be smart. We need to be prepared. We've got to think ahead. We've got to strategize. No one's thinking ahead. No one's planning. Well, I'm trying to do it. But there is going to be a day when someone dies as a result of recreational multi-rotor drone use. And everyone's going to go, oh my goodness, and the media will be full of all dangerous drones. I've already come up with some mitigation for that, because at the moment we can't calculate how much safer drones are than manned aviation, because you can't divide by zero. You know, you've got to take a ratio of things. If the bottom number is zero, you can't calculate it, right? Because that's mathematically impossible. As soon as we get one death, we can suddenly say we are 700 times safer than manned aviation, because we've got a 1 there and they've got 700 on the top. So I've already started working on strategies to deal with that when it happens, and I'll have press releases lined up to roll out to the media. But the thing that'll concern me most is that the AMA won't say anything. They won't put a press release out. No one else, they'll just sit back and take it, and that's the problem. And people say, some of my trolls say, why are you messing in America's business by commenting on American regulations? You don't even live here, you know, blah blah blah. I love trolls, and they come up and say, you're in New Zealand, it's none of your business. And I'm saying, this is a global community, it's everybody's business, and we don't have enough. We've got Sean Geeksvana there. He does an excellent job of relating the regulations and the issues involved in the UK, but that's just the UK. And I try and bring everything in, because I like to compare country to country, because every regulator is saying we've got the best regulations in the world. We're leading the world with our regulations. And to be fair, most countries have one or two things they do really well. In New Zealand, we have shielded operations. It means I can go down to the park and fly right next to a helipad, as long as I stay below the level of the trees, because the thing is that there won't be any helicopters there. There won't be any 747s there. Our regulator understands that the risk is low enough to allow you to fly in that place, even if it's close to an airfield. In Canada, they've got the no rules for sub 250. Now, in the US, you don't have to register sub 250, but all the rules still apply. In Canada, the only rules for flying a craft less than 250 grams are do not endanger people, do not endanger property, and stay out of restricted flight zones. That's it. You can fly BV-LOS. You can fly as far as you want with a sub 250. There's no prescriptive regulation. You just have to be careful and not endanger people or their stuff. That is fantastic. So why doesn't the rest of the world adopt shielded operations and Canada's sub 250? Because it's proven nobody has been killed or badly injured, and no property has been damaged as a result of these rules in these countries. So why don't we pick the best of every country, put them together, and have a really useful, practical, effective, reasonable set of rules? But no regulator is prepared to say, oh, we're going to steal that from this country because it's really good. They're going to say, we didn't think of that, so we're not going to have it. And in America, shielded operations is a perfect example. It's been proposed to the FAA. They've been thinking about it, but the general consensus is, no, we're not going to go with shielded operations. Why not? In New Zealand, not one incident. It's just ridiculous.
Shielded operations would be a huge win. You know, hey, I wouldn't even mind if they said, hey, you know what? Take a 108, you know, exam and get your shielded operations certificate, whatever. And now you got shielded operations from tree lines to the ground. Okay, I'd be on board with that. I'd be all about it. I'll take the exam to be able to have shielded operations and not have to worry about the remote ID.
All you got to do is stay below the height of an object within 100 meters. So the tallest object within 100 meters, 100 yards, stay below that height. You're a shielded operation. You're not going to have a 172 doing a low pass over the picnic grounds at the local park below the level of the trees. And if they do, their safety is not your concern. It's their concern.
And that's basically what the majority of FPV is doing anyway.
Yeah.
It's such a difference between FPV drones and, you know, the camera style drones. You know, a lot of the camera drones like to go way up and get the really, far away shots and go into higher altitudes and are at more risk of colliding with manned aircraft. I get that. I totally get that. But yeah, shielded operations for FPV would be a huge win. I would love to see that actually come to be about. And maybe, I can't look into the future and look into a crystal ball, but maybe if there is enough non-compliance, then maybe that will end up being an option. Maybe they'll throw out shielded operations as an option just to get more people to comply.
It depends on the type of there's two types of non-compliance. There is the overt and the covert. Overt is where you are non-compliant and it becomes public. You're happy to tell people you're non-compliant. I'm not doing it because, and that has the potential to work because it raises the public's eye, but it makes you a target. Then there's covert non-compliance, where you just say, I'm going to ignore this rule. And you'll never get picked up on it because you're flying way out of the way. You don't cause any problems. No one's going to bother you. So, but that doesn't cause change because nobody knows you're doing it. So everyone thinks you're following the rules. Oh, these rules are great. Look how safe we are. So it becomes difficult to kind of align that. But just to go back to our situation in New Zealand, you might think, wow, our regulator's is really good. Lets us fly in a shielded operation. But by the same token, they're crap because here in New Zealand, you cannot fly over any land without the prior permission of the property owner. I can fly over my house. If I fly over the neighbour's house, can't do it. I can't fly at the park without the council's permission. I can't fly over a river somewhere without the owner of the land the river flows on. I can't fly anywhere, a grassy field in the middle of nowhere, without first getting the permission of the person that owns the land. Yet I can fly a 172 over it. I can fly a 747 over it, no problems. But it's a tiny little drone, regardless of the size and weight, my tiny whoop, my 20-gram tiny whoop. I cannot fly it over a grassy field in the middle of nowhere because I'll be breaking the rule without permission.
That is, wow. Yeah, that's ridiculous right there. So basically they've taken the stance that people's property now goes into the airspace.
Only for drones, though. They've ceded the control of the airspace for unmanned aircraft to the property owner.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do let's just say you wanted to do a semi long range, but within VLOS flight, you may have to get 4 or 5 property owners to approve it.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
And if one of them complained, you would be facing fines.
Jeez.
It is, and as I say, everyone's got good regulations, but then again, everyone's got really stupid, ridiculous regulations. And the one that I'm going to focus on in the next few months is the visual observer for FPV, for the reasons I cited earlier. It is the most ridiculous regulation ever, and it needs to change. And that's where I think, you look at YouTube, there are thousands upon thousands of videos of people flying FPV alone without a visual observer. And have you heard of one incident where that has caused damage to property or injury or death to someone?
Well, that's a good point, Bruce, because, when I think about remote ID, I think about that particular rule as well. Because I think about how many people post themselves flying FPV without a visual observer and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So, in theory, will the same thing happen with remote ID?
It'll be interesting. What will happen is because DHS is involved, they're probably going to have to make some scapegoats out of people. They're going to have to throw the book at a few people to try and put a chilling effect on the rest of them so that the regulations will work.
Intimidation.
And that's going to be very difficult. Yeah.
Trying to intimidate. Yeah.
There are ways around it, though, because we've got some remote ID modules coming out. I think the Flight Test Community Association is doing a remote ID module, which is going to be pretty much standalone, except you plug it into your battery. It doesn't have an onboard battery, so you can move it from model to model. And it's got PC board antennas for the GPS and the Bluetooth. Now, for a quad, you want to strap that firmly to the arm of your quad so that the Bluetooth antenna is right up against the carbon. And therefore, you have a broadcast remote ID. It is going to broadcast to the maximum capabilities of the technology, but it will probably only go about 5 or 10 feet.
There you go.
You're compliant. You are compliant. You're using an approved device taped to your frame in the only way that's really practical. The fact that it doesn't give you there's no real range to it, it's not your problem.
Exactly. So there's going to be a lot of loopholes, obviously, and a lot of gray areas. And, as long as you strap the thing on your quad and it powers up, well, you're compliant, regardless of how far it can broadcast or any of that.
Even the specification is ridiculous because it has to be tamper-proof. and it has to have diagnostics. So you must be aware if it's not working. It must tell you if it's not working. How's it going to know? How's it going to know if its Bluetooth isn't actually transmitting? Because you can't transmit and receive at the same time. So it's going to be, well, it won't know. It's the people that designed the specification. And this annoys me too. If this was an open source thing, if you could build your own, that'd be great, because you could get the price right down and people could build their own. No. It has to be something that is declared to be compliant with the specification. The specification alone is over $100 if you want to buy it from the ASTM. It's not free. It's not open source. And then you can't build your own because it wouldn't be tamper-proof. And then if you do build them, you've got to track every serial number of every unit that's sold or given away or whatever. It's just a bureaucratic nightmare. And we know that bad actors are just not going to fit them anyway. Or even worse, a bad actor will go out and steal remote ID broadcast modules to use on their drone, so that if they do something bad, you get the blame because you've registered it with your drone. Someone's going to get the thing, oh, that's this number, look it up, oh, that's you. We go around to your house, raid it, search it, because the bad actor has stolen your broadcast. Or they might even just sniff it with a receiver and then build their own module, which you can do, to broadcast your remote ID number and therefore incriminate you when they do a bad thing. No one seems to have thought about this.
I know, and nobody seems to have really put any thought into the safety and security aspect of the pilot who's giving up their location, with their $2,000 to $5,000 worth of gear that they have with them, that are making themselves more vulnerable to getting mugged or robbed.
Did you see what the FAA said about that? There was an interview with, what's his name? I forget his name, the guy that fronts up for the FAA. And someone put to him, what about the risk for people getting mugged with standard remote ID broadcasting the operator's position? What if someone comes along and mugs them? And his response was, we are aware of this risk, but we would encourage people, if that happens, to phone the police. Well, how do you do that when the criminal's made off with your phone and your wallet? And the thing is, regulations should be there to reduce risk and danger. This standard remote ID raises the risk, raises the danger for the operator of the craft. No other aviation regulation in the world raises the danger for the pilot. They're all designed to do exactly the opposite. So this doesn't even fit in the standard way regulations are formed. It's contrary to the goal of every other aviation regulation.
Introducing the new Bando Basher remote ID module. Can withstand hit after hit of bashing in the Bando. It's tougher than ever. Get it now. Only $299.99.
But there's a problem. You're flying in a Bando. You don't get a GPS lock, and you fly out the door. If you don't require until you require a GPS lock, you are suddenly non-compliant. So this unit should actually disarm your drone, because it's supposed to be self-checking, and if it's not working, if there's no GPS lock, it shouldn't let you fly.
Well, as long as the Bando has a roof and we stay inside, we don't have to worry about it anyway, right?
Yeah, but windows are so much fun.
I know. You want to come out to that window, you got to have that module on there that's going to get broken in 10 seconds. It's just not practical. It's just not practical for what we do.
Someone else pointed out, though, the sub 250 is going to be a big growth area, huge growth area in sub 250 craft, because they're quite capable now. You get a sub 250 set up really well. You don't know it's not a 5-inch until you try and do a high energy, high inertia maneuver. When you want that extra weight to give you some float time, it's not there with the smaller craft. They tend to stop and fall pretty quick. But the problem there is that if people think that the 250 gram threshold is going to remain at 250 grams forever, they're dreaming, because as the capability of the craft improves, that will drop. It happened in Japan. Japan was 250 grams. Then when the Mini 2, the DJI Mini came out, they dropped it to 199 grams or 200 grams, because it was a 249 gram drone, and they didn't want that capability with that registration. That will happen everywhere. As we get smaller, more capable drones, they'll decide, these 249 gram drones are a threat. We're going to lower it to 200 grams, and then 150. It's just going to keep going down. It's a threshold they can move without having to go back to Congress or anything. It's just it's a parameter to a rule that exists. They can change it overnight, and that's what they'll do. So all that investment you've got going down to 250 or 249 grams will be lost, and you have to go down another 50 grams or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the part that really it's so unfair, at the blink of an eye, they can just change their mind and say, okay, well, 249, that's the old rule. Here's the new rule. And you got people that have invested all their money and time and innovating all this technology just to comply with this rule. just for them to overturn it at the whip of a hat. It's just mind boggling. But I tell you what, Bruce, I'm wearing a shirt right here, and I'm going to wear this shirt, and I'm going to say that I'm never going to stop flying. Yeah, FPV is not a crime. And I am always going to fly FPV as long as I have breath in my lungs and blood in my thumbs. I will always fly FPV, man. They have to come take my drones out of my cold, dead hands because I'm not giving them. I'm not giving them away.
Well, you'll never get a job in the movie industry because you're a bad actor, according to the FAA.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you. I want to thank you so much for all of your time on the show tonight, and all of your great, conversations that we've had, all of your knowledge, your wisdom that you shared. It's just been a fantastic show.
It's just old age, mate. It's just old age.
Yeah, I just hit 40, and I feel like in my life, I don't think I've ever been as wise as I am now. So I'm hoping that only gets better, as I get older.
Yeah, though you can't feel it over the aching bones and muscles and things. So.
I'm sure I still have so much more to learn. Wow, I just feel like, there's just so much that you learn over the years and you take with you, and you live and you learn, right?
Yeah, if you stop learning, you might as well be buried.
Exactly. That's another reason I just love FPV, because I feel like I'm always learning something, And if I'm not learning something about the actual hobby itself, I'm learning something about individuals who are in the hobby. So it's just a never-ending cycle of learning so many awesome, skills, and getting to know so many awesome people like yourself, and everybody we have in our community is just amazing. And we got to stick together, guys. We got to stick together, and we have to stand up against this overreach from our government, man. We've got to put our foot down, and we got to make a difference. And Bruce has shown us that we can make a difference by following his example. So make sure you're subscribed. Go down the video description. Make sure you're subscribed to Bruce's channel. Click that bell icon so you get notified with everything that's going on in his channel, and you can stay up to date with what's going on and what we need to do as a community to work together to stand up against this ridiculousness.
I'll do my best.
You do a great job, Bruce. We're so thankful for you. You're such an awesome supporter and community member out here with such a great voice. And we surely are really thankful for everything you do in our hobby, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, he is fighting the good fight. Absolutely. Anything you'd like to add, man, before we get ready to close out?
No, that was good. It's a great stream. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me as well.
If anyone else wants me on this stream, just drop me an email, because you hear the same old crap over and over again, but it reaches a new audience and helps educate more people. And I'm always keen to help out channels that are starting up, especially if you've got not much else on your plate. I'm happy to join in on the stream and help promote your channel if it does that.
Absolutely, Bruce. Would you like to put your email in the live chat?
If you go to the About tab on my channel, it's in the
information
thing. Yeah, it's the easiest way to get it.
Yep. So Bruce's channel is down in the video description. So go to his channel and go to the About tab, and he's got his email right there. So if you guys would like to have Bruce on your show, definitely hit him up. He's an absolutely fantastic supporter in the community, of awesome creator, such a legend in this hobby, man. I'm so thankful for you.
I've got to get my head out the door, so you better stop that.
That's all right, man. We'll get you out. We'll get your head out the door. No worries. I can't wait to see all the updates on your channel as well, and hope the weather turns around for you, so at least you can get some fly days in.
Yeah, hopefully so. And because I can't fly indoors because cats eat my tiny whoop.
Yeah, my dog, he'll chew up an RC car in a heartbeat, but if I fly a little 65 millimeter whoop in the house, he runs and cowers on the bed.
Sounds like
it must
my
be
wife.
The sound.
Yeah.
Must be the sound. Well, thank you so much, my friend. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll definitely be keeping up with you on all your social media.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
Okay. Next time.
All right. Guys, give XJET a round of applause. Awesome to have him on the stream. I'm so excited. And an awesome, great stream. Make sure you watch it back if you didn't catch everything. Some awesome conversation. And make sure you check his channel out. Make sure you're subscribed. Click that bell icon and make sure you subscribe to me as well, because there's going to be more live streams to come. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Got a brand new edit dropping tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I review the Drone Mask 2. So you're not going to want to miss out for that. Thank you guys all for the wonderful support. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching. edrone